Welcome and thank you for standing by. Participants are in a listen-only mode until the comment session of today's conference. At that time, you may press star 1 on your touch-tone phone. Today's conference is being recorded and will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. And now I would like to turn the conference over to Mr. Michael Cook. Thank you, sir. You may begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's public town hall on the initial proposals for updating the United States Office of Management Budget's Federal Race and Ethnicity Statistical Standards. Thank you all for joining us. In January, the Office of the Chief Statistician of the United States took a key step forward in its formal process to revise the Office of Management and Budget's, or OMB's, statistical standards for collecting and reporting race and ethnicity data across federal agencies, what we call Statistical Policy Directive Number 15. By publishing an initial set of recommended revisions proposed by an interagency technical working group, this town hall is simulcast on multiple channels and is being recorded. The purpose of this series of town halls is to provide a forum for the public to express their thoughts to the Chief Statistician of the United States and OMB's Interagency Technical Working Group on Race and Ethnicity Standards. Today, I am pleased to welcome the Chief Statistician of the United States, Dr. Karen Orvis, and the Chair and Co-Chair of the Interagency Technical Working Group, Bob Savinsky and Karen Battle. Dr. Orvis will first provide opening remarks, then Bob Savinsky and Karen Battle will give a brief presentation on the background of Statistical Policy Directive Number 15, as well as the Interagency Technical Working Group's initial proposals for improving these standards. Then we will welcome the members of the public on this call to briefly share their thoughts on how to improve federal race and ethnicity data. In order to hear from as many people as possible, we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 2 minutes. I'd now like to introduce the Chief Statistician of the United States, Dr. Karen Orvis. Welcome, Dr. Orvis.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining today to participate in this incredible opportunity we have to improve the federal race and ethnicity data so it better reflects our diverse America. My name is Dr. Karen Orvis, and as the Chief Statistician of the United States, I coordinate the activities of the federal statistical system to ensure the accuracy, objectivity, and relevance of federal statistics. Now, one way that I do that is overseeing the development and updating of government-wide statistical standards. These standards, like the Statistical Policy Directive Number 15, help agencies maximize the quality and usefulness of federal data. Shortly after I took on the role of Chief Statistician of the United States, I made updating OMB's race and ethnicity standards a top priority. These standards affect nearly every federal form and survey that collects race and ethnicity data, and they shape the way we describe our population and analyze programs to help us understand how well the federal government is serving the American people. This will be our first update in over 25 years. This is our chance to think about how things have changed during this time and what we've learned about collecting and using race and ethnicity data since then. The standards will be updated using a robust, long-established process that includes a technical review by interagency experts and meaningful input from the public. This process began last summer when I stood up an interagency technical working group to review the current statistical standards. This working group is made up of federal government career staff who represent more than 20 agencies that collect and use race and ethnicity data. I charged them with developing recommendations for improving the quality and the usefulness of this data. They recently delivered a set of initial proposals for public feedback, which we released in the Federal Register on January 26th. Now, it's important to remember that these recommendations are preliminary, not final, and they do not represent the final positions of OMB or the agencies participating on the working group. At this stage, the working group needs input and perspectives from the public, data users, and communities that are affected by these standards. We want to listen to you and hear your perspective. Your input is going to be very important to help guide the working group as they conduct additional research and outreach, and they develop their final recommendations for OMB. Now, we have several different ways in which you can provide feedback. First, we hope that you'll provide your personal thoughts and feedback and reactions on these proposals, including how you believe they may affect different communities, by providing written comments through the Federal Register. And the deadline to provide written comments is April 12th. Second, we're hosting 3 of these virtual town halls this week to be able to hear directly from the public, and this is our first one. These town halls will enable you to share your thoughts, but it also allows you to hear from other members of the public and what they have to say. Third, the working group is continuing to host virtual bi-monthly listening sessions where members of the public can deliver short presentations directly to the working group. These listening sessions will continue as the working group is conducting additional research and developing their final recommendations, but they are filling up fast. You can use the working group's website, spd15revision.gov, to learn more about all these ways to engage in the process. You can also use it to find the full Federal Register notice, as well as learn more about OMB's race and ethnicity standards, about my office, the Office of the Chief Statistician of the United States, as well as the working group. We are committed to a full, transparent revision process, guided by input by the American people, and we plan to complete these revisions no later than summer of 2024. Your participation truly is going to be very important in this process. It's going to help us improve the way federal agencies safely and accurately collect and use information on race and ethnicity of our diverse America. So I need your help to get this right. I want to thank everybody who's joined us today for the town hall, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts and perspectives. Here with me, as Michael said, is Bob Savinsky, the chair, and Karen Battle, the co-chair of the Interagency Technical Working Group. They're going to give you some background on the statistical standards and the working group's initial proposals before we open the floor to hear from all of you. Again, I want to thank you for joining us, and now I'll turn it over to Bob Savinsky.
All right, thank you, Karen, and hello, everyone. I'm Bob Savinsky. I'm a statistician on Dr. Orvis's staff, and I'm the chair of OMB's Interagency Technical Working Group on Race and Ethnicity Standards. As Karen mentioned, in January, OMB published a set of initial proposals for improving the federal race and ethnicity standards in the Federal Register. Public comments are being accepted through April 12th of this year. I'm going to give a brief history of these OMB race and ethnicity standards, and then I'll turn it over to the co-chair of the working group, Karen Battle, who will go over the details of these initial proposals for revision. The Office of Management and Budget initially developed its race and ethnicity standards back in 1977 in cooperation with other federal agencies in order to provide consistent data on race and ethnicity throughout the federal government, including things like the decennial census, other household surveys, and federal administrative forms like benefit applications. Since 1977, the standards have been revised only one time, resulting in the 1997 standards for maintaining, collecting, and presenting federal data on race and ethnicity. You should be seeing the current standards now on the screen. Yes, good. For data collected directly from respondents, this is what it looks like. The current standards require 2 separate race and ethnicity questions, with the ethnicity question collected first before the race question. So for the first question, are you Hispanic or Latino? The 2 minimum response categories are 1, Hispanic or Latino, which is currently defined as a person of Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, South or Central American, or other Spanish culture or origin, regardless of race, or 2, not Hispanic or Latino. For the second question, the instructions are, what is your race? Mark or select one or more, and the minimum response categories are One, American Indian or Alaskan Native, which is currently defined as a person having origins in any of the original peoples of North and South America, including Central America, and who maintains tribal affiliation or community attachment. Asian, currently defined as a person having origins in any of the original peoples of the Far East, Southeast Asia, or the Indian subcontinent, including, for example, Cambodia, China, India, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Pakistan, the Philippine Islands, Thailand, and Vietnam. Black or African American, which is currently defined as a person having origins in any of the Black racial groups of Africa. Terms such as Haitian or Negro can be used in the current standards in addition to Black or African American. Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, that is currently defined as a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Hawaii, Guam, Samoa, or other Pacific Islands. And white, currently defined as a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa. And as I described back up in the question instructions, respondents are encouraged to select as many of these race categories that apply to themselves in the second question. So this is how race and ethnicity data have largely been collected by the federal government since 1997. Now, my co-chair, Karen Battle, will go over the initial proposals from the Interagency Technical Working Group on how to improve these standards. The floor is yours, Karen.
Thank you. And hello, everybody. My name is Karen Battle, and I am the Chief of the Population Division at the Census Bureau, and I am the co-chair of the Interagency Technical Working Group. And as Dr. Orvis and Bob said, on January 26th, OMB released a federal registered notice with the initial proposals from the working group for improving the current race and ethnicity standards. The Federal Register Notice requests comments on these initial proposals, and responses to this notice will help the working group develop their final recommendations to OMB. The responses will also be read by the Office of the Chief Statistician of the United States and will help OMB make final decisions on how to best update the standards. The public has through April 12th to submit comments to the Federal Register Notice. So the comments we get on these proposals are extremely important. They will help both the working group and then OMB ensure that we get this right. Now note that these proposals are preliminary and do not reflect the settled opinions of the working group or OMB. The working group needs your input to help guide our research and deliberations as we work on developing our final recommendations. So proposal number 1 is to collect race and ethnicity information using one combined question. The working group proposes moving from the 2 separate questions format to a single combined question as the required design for self-reported race and ethnicity data. Now, we recognize that a new combined question design may take significant time and resources for some programs to implement. So flexibility should be allowed for agencies who are dependent on aggregate data that are not self-reported, or data from non-federal providers. The working group made this proposal because evidence suggests that the use of separate race and ethnicity questions confuses many respondents who instead understand race and ethnicity to be similar concepts. For example, a large percentage of Hispanic or Latino respondents on the decennial census and the American Community Survey are either not reporting a race at all or are selecting some other race after responding to the ethnicity question. Census Bureau research found that a combined race and ethnicity question reduces confusion and reduces some of the race reporting by Hispanic or Latino respondents. Proposal number 2 is to add Middle Eastern or North African, or MENA, as a new minimum category. The working group proposes adding Middle Eastern or North African as a new minimum reporting category distinct from all other reporting categories. The definition of the current white, reporting category would be edited to remove MENA from its definition. The working group developed the following draft definition of a MENA minimum category to be inclusive of both Middle Eastern and North African populations, and with the rationale of listing larger population groups in the United States. The category, Middle Eastern or North African, includes all individuals who identify with one or more nationalities or ethnic groups with origins in the Middle East and North Africa. Examples include, but are not limited to, Lebanese, Iranian, Egyptian, Syrian, Moroccan, and Israeli. Currently, in SPD 15, the white minimum category specifically includes in its definition those having origins in any of the original peoples of the Middle East or North Africa. But research suggests that many MENA respondents view their identity as distinct from white, and stakeholders have long advocated for collecting MENA information separate from white. Proposal number 3 is to require the collection of detailed race and ethnicity categories by default. The working group proposes that the standards require agencies to collect race and ethnicity data at the detailed category levels, unless an agency determines that it isn't feasible or useful to collect that additional detail. In those cases, agencies must at least use the standard's minimum categories. In any circumstance, agencies are encouraged to collect and provide more granular data than the minimum categories. The example design in this figure represents one of potentially several options for establishing a consistent approach to collecting more detailed data, with the minimum categories disaggregated by country of origin. Now, this example was chosen by the working group because it reflects the approach that performed best of the options tested by the Census Bureau prior to the 2020 census. The country of origin options reflect the most common countries of origin in the United States for each minimum category. The next example design in this figure represents the working group's proposed minimum categories for use when more detailed collection is not feasible or justified. It incorporates other proposals from the working group to use a combined race and ethnicity question and to add a new minimum category for MENA. The minimum categories in the standards show differences in a wide variety of outcomes for distinct groups within their definitions. The increasing demand for analysis that represents the diversity of the American public increases the need for race and ethnicity information on more detailed groups beyond the minimum categories in the standards. Many agencies already collect additional details. For example, some current surveys and forms use detailed checkboxes, write-in fields, or both to collect detailed race and ethnicity data. However, collecting data using only the minimum categories may be necessary when, for example, low response rates among population groups lead to non-representative data, small sample sizes make estimates about disaggregated groups statistically unreliable, data are collected by proxy, or sparsely populated data tables in analyses or publications create privacy or confidentiality risks. For example, the race and ethnicity data on death certificates sometimes needs to be collected by observation, and in such cases, it probably is not feasible to try to collect very specific or detailed information. Proposal 4, terminology. The working group proposes that SPD 15 remove Negro from the Black or African American definition, remove Far East from the Asian definition, replacing it with East Asian, remove Other from Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander, and remove the phrase who maintain tribal affiliation or community attachment in the American Indian or Alaska Native definition, making this minimum categories definition consistent with all minimum categories. And the working group proposes that the American Indian or Alaska Native minimum category description be changed to the category American Indian or Alaska Native includes all individuals who identify with any of the original peoples of North, Central, and South America. The working group also proposes that SBD 15 discontinue use of the terms majority and minority. The working group also proposes that if a combined race and ethnicity question is adopted, the question stem should use race and ethnicity as part of the question. That is, what is your race or ethnicity? The working group proposes that the current instructions of mark one or more and select one or more be updated to mark all that apply and select all that apply. The terminology used in the standards should seek to ensure that all people are able to identify themselves within one or more of the minimum categories, that the minimum and detailed categories reflect meaningful and easy to understand distinctions, and that the language used is respectful of how people refer to themselves. Proposal 5 is implementation guidance. The working group proposes that the standards for question design be accompanied by guidance for agencies, and that those related documents be placed online in a central location. They specify the need for guidance on an implementation timeline for when agencies must meet the new standards, statistical methods to connect data collected under the current standards with data collected under revised standards, procedures for collecting, processing, and reporting detailed racial and ethnic categories, approaches for collecting race and ethnicity information when self-identification is not possible, approaches for reporting data for respondents who select more than one race or ethnicity, guidance on obtaining approval under the Paperwork Reduction Act to revise existing race and ethnicity data collection, and best practices for agencies to rely on when communicating SPD 15 revisions to stakeholders. It is a significant undertaking for agencies to implement changes to censuses, surveys, and administrative forms that collect race and ethnicity data. Agencies need guidance to implement any potential SPD 15 revisions like those included in the working group's initial proposals. So in closing, I want to stress again how important public feedback is to this process. The working group needs your input to help us understand how you view your racial and ethnic identity, how you want to use race and ethnicity data, and how you would like to be represented in federal data. In addition to the proposals that I just went over, the working group and OMB welcome comments and suggestions on any other ways that the standards could be revised to produce more accurate and useful race and ethnicity data. So today we want to listen to you and we want to hear your perspective. So please take this opportunity to share your thoughts with the public, the working group, and the Chief Statistician of the United States. Whether you choose to speak at this meeting or just listen, we encourage all of you here today to visit the Federal Registered Notice to share your comments by April 12, which is the best way to submit your comments. And so now we want to turn it over to you to hear what you have to say. So Michael, I think it's back in your hands for now.
Thank you, Karen. We'll now begin taking comments from the public about the initial proposals on the race and ethnicity standards. Remember, this is your chance to share your perspectives. If you have questions about the initial proposals or the review process, please visit spd15revision.gov for more information. We also ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less so we can hear from as many people as possible today in the time we have. Operator, Do we have our first caller?
Thank you. Yes, we do. And as a reminder, if you do have a comment, please press *1. Please take a moment to record both your name and affiliation clearly when prompted. Both are needed to introduce your comment. And to withdraw that comment, you may press *2. But again, *1 to get in queue for your comment. Our first at this time is from France Ramsey, the public. Sir, your line is open.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm here to advocate for American freedmen as the ethnic designation on the U.S. Census and other documents. American freedmen was first defined on March 3rd, 1865, through the Freedmen's Bureau Act and the Freedmen's Bank Act. And in the Freedmen's Bank Act, it says persons heretofore held in slavery in the United States or their descendants. That's the definition for American freedmen. A year later, in 1866, the Native tribes were forced to release their slaves by signing a treaty with the United States, and each of those 5 tribes agreed to make their freedmen citizens of their nation, and they may now have the freedmen designation as well. They're called Creek freedmen, Cherokee freedmen, Chickasaw freedmen, Choctaw freedmen, and Seminole freedmen. So the only difference is that we're American freedmen, but the use of freedmen has been going on for over 158 years. And so it's important that we do not use acronyms like FBA, ADOS, or even for other designations like MENA. We need to go back to more accurate and scientific uses and historical precedents. And with that, I'll end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. We'll definitely be taking that back to the working group, and just want to share that the Federal Register notice does ask for public comment on this very topic. So appreciate you also sharing that in the written format if you're able to. Thank you.
And operator, do we have our next caller?
Yes, our next, Amira Lawson. Your line is now open.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this opportunity to speak at this town hall. Thank you for your presentation. I need, my progeny needs, my ancestors' needs for a specific designation for those of us who descend from chattel slavery in America. And I see the current proposal still collapses Black and African American with the subcategories of Black and African American. That is confusing, that is erasure, and we need that specific call out so that we can account for our history and what has been stolen from us in the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your views with us. Thank you.
Operator, can we have our next caller?
Friday Jones, your line is now open.
I am Friday Jones, and my name is Kanta Jones Muhammad. Today, I am submitting a statement as the president of the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants. As participants in a Vision for Equitable Data, recommendations for the Equitable Data Working Group, who had a primary directive to generate disaggregated statistical estimates to characterize the experiences of historically underserved groups while increasing non-federal research and community access to disaggregate data for the evidence building that supports equity efforts, we affirm that African American descendants of persons enslaved in the United States are the most historically underserved group in the country, and maintain that data has never been collected on us in a way to assert peoplehood or political power. NAASD does not support the OMB's position to collect race and ethnicity using a singular combined question. This approach is paper genocide. We also hold the position that the term freedman is a political designation separate from both race and ethnicity, and that very matter is before the Supreme Court in case Brackeen versus Holland. NAASD is a nonprofit 501c3 committed to advancing the national movement for compensatory reparations for African Americans, descendants of persons enslaved in the U.S. as chattel. NAASD is American Freedmen-led and therefore focused on directly repairing the issues impacting our communities. NAASD seeks to preserve the African American community's unique lineage and ethnic culture for generations to come, which in turn serves to heal America and guarantees democracy for all. In closing, we recommend that the term African American be used exclusively for descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, with the definition listed for clarity. This will allow the members of the Black diaspora to claim their separate and wonderfully unique ethnic identities. The OMB posed a question asking if slave descendants should receive a category. Our response is absolutely 100% yes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for taking the time to participate in the call and share your thoughts with us.
Operator, do we have our next caller?
Our next, Michael Evans with the Census Bureau. Your line is open.
This time.
Michael Evans, Census Bureau, your line is open.
Yes, I have no comment at this time.
Thank you very much. Valerio Martinelli, Legislative Director of NALIO Educational Fund, your line is open.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. My name is Valerio Martinelli. I'm the Legislative Director within NALIO Educational Fund. And I wanted to begin my comments by saying that the NALIO Educational Fund fully supports using a combined question approach for collecting data on the Hispanic origin and race. And we also fully support the addition of a MENA category. And I wanted to give you a brief description of our organization. The NALIO Educational Fund is the nation's leading nonprofit organization that facilitates the full participation of Latinos in the American process, from citizenship to public service. Our board members and constituency include the nation's more than 7,000 Latino elected and appointed officials, and include Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. NALIO Educational Fund is a national leader in census outreach, community education, and policy development. And since the 1990 census, our organization has conducted outreach campaigns to promote the full and accurate count of the Latino community. Together with media and community-based organization and partners, we led campaigns to drive responses to the 2020 census through dissemination of community education materials and the promotion of a toll-free census information hotline staffed by bilingual operators. In addition, NALIO is also a leading expert on census policy development, and we have a long record of service on the Bureau National Advisory Committee. The organization serves as the co-chair of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights Census Task Force, a steering committee member of the Census Counts campaign, and we're co-chair of the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda Census Task Force. And to reiterate my first point, we believe that the high percentage of Latinos that use
2 minutes, sir.
Sorry. We believe that the use of the combined question will dramatically reduce the percentage of Latinos that respond to other race on the questionnaire, and overall will lead to a much better picture of the Latino population and all our country's population. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next is from South Carolina. Ma'am, your line is open. South Carolina, your line is open.
Is that me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I couldn't hear you. My name is Dr. Amanda Sahar-Durso, and I am a postdoctoral scholar in the Department of Government at Dartmouth College, and I'll be joining the Department of Government as an assistant professor of race and ethnic politics at Georgetown University in the fall, so I wanted to give my credentials. I am of MENA descent, and my work primarily focuses on MENA identity in the United States. I just wanted to share that I did replicate an original survey that replicated in part the 2015 study done by the census, which showed that when MENA individuals are given the option to choose MENA, they are more likely to select MENA over white. The additional finding that I have is that relative to the 2015 census, where individuals were more likely to select white if there was no MENA option, I found that MENA individuals are now even less likely to select white when there is no MENA option, and in fact, they are more likely to select other. So I think this is indicative of a trend of MENA individuals moving away from the white category. They're not selecting white in the absence of a MENA category, but they are selecting MENA when the option is available. My website is amandadurso.com, and I'm really happy to talk more about this, and I definitely will be writing comments. My research just shows that MENA individuals are, by and large, very supportive across generations and across different racial groups. So that is Afro-MENA and white MENA and brown MENA individuals are very likely to select MENA. And so we actually have a huge data issue if we don't have a separate category, of course, for this group who, you know, operates in the American system a bit differently than Anglo-white Americans. So thank you so much, and looking forward to the rest of these conversations.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your research with us, and thank you for sharing your intent to put written comments in the Federal Register notice.
Operator, can we have our next caller?
Susie Abachian, your line is open.
Hi, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Hello? Okay. My name is Dr. Susie Abachian, and I'm the city clerk of Glendale, California, the city with the highest concentration of Armenian Americans in the U.S. Armenian Americans are not accurately counted in the census. This shapes both federal, state, and local categories and results in funding opportunities and anti-discrimination efforts for the Armenian American community. This is why I wholeheartedly support the MENA category on the census questionnaire and insist that it must have an Armenian subcategory checkbox. The Armenian American community is made up of immigrants, refugees, English language learners who are racialized in the U.S. like other MENA groups and face legal, educational, workplace, and linguistic marginalization. However, their classification under the white category obfuscates their experiences and renders the community invisible. For example, in the city of Glendale, where approximately 40% of the population identifies as having Armenian ancestry, the latest demographic information for Glendale, according to the census, reads approximately 61% white, 19% Latino, 14% Asian, 2% African American. This renders the Armenian community of Glendale invisible within federal data. Another example is the racial ethnic breakdown of poverty rates of Glendale women from 2017 to 2021. Census data shows 17% of white women, 16% of Latinas, 11% of African American women, and 5% of Asian women live on incomes below the federal poverty level. There is no existing data on Armenian women, and particularly many of the elderly women living on incomes below the poverty level. The recent redistricting of assembly districts and the splitting of Glendale between two assembly districts is yet another example of how the current racial ethnic classifications do not provide Armenian Americans with electoral protections that other populations have. Armenian Americans have been considered as MENA peoples by the OMB and were the second largest group of the MENA respondents on the opt-in ancestry question in 2000 census. Please include an Armenian checkbox under MENA. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Operator, can we have our next caller?
Owen Niebuhr, your line is now open.
Yes, so I'm Owen Nieberg. I'm the Chief Analytics Officer of a global diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting firm called Exponential Talent. And we work with very large corporations around the world to further their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. We just wanted to note that we really want to applaud the OMB for its efforts to gather more detailed data and better reflect our multi-ethnic population. It allows large corporations, which are our clients, to further their efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the corporate workplaces. And while all of the comments that I've heard so far are excellent, and I would encourage the OMB to consider further increasing its data collection, just this effort in general is something that we think is fantastic, and we know that our clients will be greatly appreciative in their efforts. If we were to make two small suggestions, one is that we see, especially among some of our European clients, which may lead to a trend in the United States, we see the word race as being considered a social construct, and you may consider changing that to just simply use the word ethnicity throughout all of your surveys, rather than the dual words of race and ethnicity, and just use ethnicity. And then secondly, many of our clients are trying to capture data across their workforces that are multi-ethnic, and I would encourage you to set up a system that would allow some form of checking all that apply so that those people answering the questionnaire are not limited to a single category, especially as our population becomes more and more diverse. So thank you again for all of your efforts, and we so applaud this much long past due need to update our capturing of this data.
Thank you. I really appreciate your comment, and just want to also share that the intent of the proposal is to have mark all that apply to be able to account for that diversity.
Operator, may we have our next caller?
Thank you, sir. Michael Van Cleve, your line is open for comments.
Hello, my name is Michael Van Cleve. I'm an attorney in Florida, and I also have been reviewing all the OMB materials and race and ethnicity materials that the government has produced probably since the early 90s, based on a lawsuit that I advocated for to update these race categories. I reviewed the working group's recommendations, and I agree with the MENA recommendations. A lot's been said on that, so I don't think I need to say any more, as well as the combined race and ethnicity question, and even the decision to update the American Indian and Alaskan Native categories. I agree with that as well. I guess the one thing I would like to add is I'm hoping that the group is able to evaluate the efficacy of continuing to measure the American population with a color identity. It seems to me, after thinking about this for quite some time, that a regional and ancestral approach or geographical approach to measuring what we call race and ethnicity is probably the most objective way to do it. And it would probably eliminate or mitigate a lot of the bias and the negative baggage associated with race, trying to figure out someone's physical characteristics. And, you know, for those people who are multi-ethnic and who may actually have backgrounds in, you know, from different areas, white, black, or et cetera, they can just, it's easier to identify where your ancestry, what your ancestry is, and perhaps where you came from in the world, rather than trying to fit yourself in a color identity box. I'm probably already close to my 2 minutes, but I hope that the OMB is able to consider that in addition to some of the other recommendations that have already been made.
Thank you very much for that comment. We will take that back to the working group.
Thank you.
Operator, may we have our next caller?
John Ludd, your line is open, sir.
Hi, my name is John Mudd. I'm calling because, I agree with the previous callers in regards to getting rid of the construct of race, but I am concerned in regards to the Black category. Based on the 1997 standards, African American has been defined as pretty much any Black person, Haitian, and, you know, Black Americans who have been here, who descend from American chattel slavery, are kind of grouped together under that terminology as it has been previously defined. So I am concerned about that, and I hope that there is something that is done to bring out the distinctions between these groups. I believe that Black Americans who descend from American chattel slavery, or who have lineage that goes back to the origins of the founding of this country, have a very unique experience. And the way that these terminologies have been used has kind of clouded that experience and hides basically something that I think is unique to America. So I hope that even if the terminology of African American is continued to be used to describe this group that descends from American chattel slavery, that the definition is very clear as to which group we're talking about, and that the distinctions are made clear to other groups so that they're not confused about which box they should check in that regard. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I think that so far, everything else that I see on the as far as decisions or options that are going to be taken on, they look good. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We know that this is an important issue, and we did, as we said, identify it in the Federal Register notice as one of the areas where we are specifically seeking more input from the public because we want to learn more about it. So we definitely appreciate you taking the time to share those thoughts with us today.
Operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Nancy Krieger, your line is open now.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Nancy Krieger. I'm professor of social epidemiology at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health in Boston, Massachusetts. I do a lot of work on racialized health inequities and other forms of health injustice, including in relation to economic, et cetera. And I'm offering some very quick comments. First, overall support for what you are doing and the approach that you're taking to revise the standards. And I recall working back in 1997 with Kathy Wallman, much earlier, about bringing her into the American Public Health Association to talk with public health people. And that brings me to my second big concern, which is that I understand you're going to put in statistical guidance, which is necessary for bridging statistics so that there can be continuity in monitoring trends. Because if we do not understand if things are getting better or worse in reality, as opposed to being an artifact of recategorization of people, that's a big problem. We need to know whether poverty is getting worse or better. We need to know whether racialized health inequities are getting worse or better. So that needs resources and not just statistical guidance. That means I am very acutely aware of how long it took for so many different state health departments to get on board with fixing their birth certificates, fixing the death certificates. Even if you have a standard certificate, there's money that needs to be expended. CDC is hampered right now in its attempts to do data modernization because of lack of budget. So as you give this guidance, I hope it's going to be with real attention to what the actual resources are needed to be able to have good bridging statistics so we can have continuity of measurement. The other point that I want to make, which I think is a little technical, but is I'm also involved in research on looking at the impacts of the new differential privacy that the census has implemented, and just want to make sure that there are more refined groups being used for accurately capturing how people self-identify means that the differential privacy budget takes that into account. And that's really crucial for small area statistics that I do a lot with, because I do a ton with census tract data and otherwise. And above all, I really want to support the
Sorry, Nancy, we are at 2 minutes.
That's it. I'm support. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you very much for raising those important questions. And we are definitely going to be discussing those issues in the technical working group. So thank you.
And operator, may we have our next caller?
Of course. Billy Gambella, your line is open, sir.
I am Billy Gambella from the Bronx, New York. I am a writer and researcher with 15 years plus experience in genealogy and genetic ancestral origins by way of DNA testing with whole genome sequencing, which is clinical grade testing. Then the maternal side, FGS, full genome sequence of mitochondrial DNA. After that, if you happen to be male, we would test the Y chromosome 67 to 111 marker test, followed by ATDNA, autosomal mixture DNA, to coincide with genealogy paper trail research. These are the 5 methods of research that is needed to find ancestral origins. I say that to say scientifically and genetically, if you are of African descent, you are indigenous to Africa, Eurasia, or the Americas. I have compiled 13 genetic studies on the experiences of ancient Africans in America prior to and post last glacial maximum, 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, including a 2015 study from Harvard University entitled Genetic Evidence for the Two Founding Populations of America. And that genetic evidence revealed that the Austronesian and Melanesian people, as well as sub-Saharan Africans, which also fall under most African Americans, were found in ancient indigenous populations of Central and South America. According to the OMB, racial classification of all groups, American Indian, Asian, Native Hawaiian, white, all have origins in the original people of their continent except for Black and Latinos. The definition of Black in the OMB, Black or African American, a person having origins in any Black racial groups of Africa, and Haitian and Negro can be used as well. A point of no origins in the original people of Africa, Asia, or the Americas has been used to dehumanize and denationalize African Americans. We need to restore our indigenous status in the international community with terms that are reserved for human rights, like African American freedmen, autochthonous African American, indigenous African American, paleo African American, with our own aggregated slot for our newfound identity. And also we need to eliminate the word Negro from African Americans because the legal term for Negro means slaves for life. And with that.
Thank you, Billy. I really appreciate you sharing your views today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And operator, may we have our next caller, please?
Of course. John S. Michael, your line is now open.
Thank you. I'm a demographer with 25 years experience in the government, and I'm also a research associate at the McNeil Center for Early American Studies, where I study 19th century scholars of race. I support updating the OMB guidelines. However, the current racial classification Asian includes two major populations, Indian and Chinese, who should not be combined as one cohort. These populations have different cultures, immigration experiences, and should not be grouped together for medical research. Likewise, Hispanic Latino includes Iberian Europeans and three multiracial populations, Central Americans, South Americans, and Caribbeans. The proposed racial classification, MENA, includes two major populations, North Africans and Middle Easterners. The racial classification white is arbitrarily defined and ill-suited for modern medical research. Under the traditional Anglo-American caste system, white designated free persons as opposed to enslaved persons. That is how it was used in the first US Census. In the 18th century, the influential French zoologist Baron Cuvier used white to refer to Europeans and people who lived adjacent to Europe, which would be what we would now call MENA. I propose consideration of the following categories, which would provide a crosswalk to prior census data: white European, white North African, white Middle Eastern, Black African American, Black West African, Black East African, Black South African, Asian, East Asia, Asian South Asia, Asian Southeast Asia, Latin American, Central America, Latin America, South America, Latin America, Caribbean, Native American, US or Canada, Native America, Central America or Caribbean, Native America, South America. Lastly, there needs to be official mapping of all nations of the world showing what nations are classified as white, Black or African, Asian, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander or American Indian. I've done research to find out if any such list or map was ever generated by the census, and I have found none. I believe it would be much clearer to people filling out the census forms and people dealing with this issue if such map were available. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much for sharing your ideas with us. We will take that back to the working group.
Operator, may we have our next caller, please?
Iris Peoples, your line is open for comment.
Hello, I hope you guys are able to hear me.
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Awesome, thank you so much. My name is Iris Peoples, and I first off want to thank you guys for having this town hall and for your transparency and for also welcoming public comment because of course this is so crucial, it's important to many different peoples of America. I happen to be a Black American who has actually traced my lineage to the 1600s in what is now known as Virginia. And so what I would like you guys to make sure that you consider is to have a special delineation for our people, for my people. And when I say a special delineation, I would like to have data that is specific to the Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery and how that may be different from the new Americans that maybe come from certain other immigrant backgrounds. So I would like to make sure that we have that data and that classification on the record. And one of the main reasons is because of how race has been used to thwart progress in this country. For instance, currently, you know, people say Harvard is very, very diverse, and it is. But if you look at the actual Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery, there are less students at Harvard today than there were back during Reconstruction. So if you look at the real data and the real numbers, we won't have to see a lie of progress. We'll actually see like where everything is and really how we can properly move forward as a country to make sure that this country is strong and respects all people groups that are a part of it, especially the Native populations. Speaking as somebody who's been here since before America was, you know, the Revolutionary War. So thank you guys so much again. And I would just like to thank you for this delineation and to please, please, please offer, if we have a racial group of Black, please also offer an ethnicity.
Sorry, we're at 2 minutes now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us and adding your perspective to the conversation.
Thank you.
Operator, may we have the next caller, please?
Tifton at Gehring, your line is open.
Hello, my name is Tristan Garian. Thank you for providing this opportunity to share my comments. I support adding Middle Eastern or MENA category and removing it from the white category, and adding Armenian to the definition of the Middle Eastern category and to the list of examples like Lebanese, Syrian, and Persian. I'm a descendant of survivors of the Armenian genocide, and I'm 100% Middle Eastern, confirmed by my genetic test. My parents are immigrants from Syria and Iran, and I'm the first from both sides to be born in the United States. I identify as Armenian, and I view my identity as distinct from white. Yet when I fill out census forms, I have the option of selecting white or other, but not Middle Eastern. Whenever possible, I write Armenian or Middle Eastern into the other category to make sure my race is included. One of the largest problems facing the Middle Eastern population in the US is that of invisibility. The Middle Eastern population remains unorganized and unrecognized because of the government's approach to categorizing them. Since 9/11, Middle Eastern individuals have been a target of racial profiling by police and security officers, airport security, the media, and discrimination in particular by white communities that they are categorized with. But the magnitude of this practice is impossible to quantify when there's no government measurement of it. Without the data to measure its existence, the problem is underappreciated and potential remedies cannot be effectively assessed. By recognizing Middle Easterners as a separate category from white, we will be able to quantify discrimination against the community. And redefining this category would also alleviate confusion facing Middle Easterners and others who are categorizing them when responding to race questions. It would aid the administration of state and local programs, support the principle of self-identification, and provide a more complete picture of American society. By being a separate category, Middle Easterners would also benefit by being recognized as much.
We're at 2 minutes now.
We would be recognized as separate category and be hired and recruited as diverse candidates. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your views with us today. Thank you.
Operator, may we have our next caller?
Marcus Friedman, your line is now open.
Mr. Friedman?
Marcus Friedman, please unmute your phone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. We can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, it's Marcus Champion, not Marcus Friedman.
Sorry about that.
Good afternoon. Black people who descend from the United States chattel slavery have never truly had personhood in this country. We have historically been treated as less than a human being from the inception of the United States. After the 1977 introduction of SBD 15, the uniqueness of our special people was further maligned by declaring all Black people in this country are the same despite their origin. That the Black descendants of persons enslaved in the United States were not deserving of their own designation, even though our ancestors' blood, sweat, and tears fertilized this American soil. If a racial category must remain, it should be Black. The ethnicity should be Afro-American descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. This term embodies our uniqueness to this country and is backed by legal precedents. California law SB 189, Section 14, 8310.6 is ahead of the curve in the data collection process in what is the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world. California law AB 3121, the task force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans, also names the eligible community as African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. Other designations within the Black category should include African Black and the countries that comprise the continent, Caribbean Black and the countries therein, and other Black. In no logical way should any hashtags or acronyms be used to represent our people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to participate today and to share the detailed response that you had. I appreciate that. I also want to just share for everyone, as I'm seeing the videos too, note that I think we are all taking small shorthanded notes as we are hearing from you. So you might see us looking down or looking around, and for me, I know I'm typing to capture the great feedback and the great input that we're hearing, and most certainly we will be scrubbing the videos again to be able to share all of this information back with the working group. But if you see us looking around, that's what we're doing.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller?
Mia, your line is now open. Amia? Amia, please unmute your phone. Your line is open on our side.
I'm so sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for allowing us to speak. My name is Amia. I'm here to express my support for American freedmen, being the ethnic designation for Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves. Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves have a unique history in this nation. We have inherited the debt accrued by this nation from over 250 years of chattel slavery to over 100 years of government-sanctioned anti-Black racism. The government established the Freedmen's Bureau to specifically address our needs. The Bureau closed, but the status still remains. As we can see in states like Cali, government departments to serve freedmen are back. Well, are trying to be brought back, sorry, hence reactivating the status. The ethnic designation will be for Black Americans who can show that they are descendants of American slaves, hence the word freedmen and the freedman status. We are different from a Black person here in the US from other countries like Jamaica, Cuba, Nigeria, or Brazil, since we are the direct descendants of the people who built this nation, fought for this nation, but experienced centuries of racial terrorism that has resulted in us having the deepest disparities in all areas in quality of life. And I also wanted to say the hypocrisy is not lost upon me, that a white person can legally check white as their race, but they are from North Africa, versus East, South, and West Africans will have to legally check Black and African Americans. This will, if we can come together under the freedman status, this will help our numbers. We need our true numbers. Some numbers in the races are inflated and some are deflated. Please help us. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Eugene Devani, attorney. Sir, your line is open.
Yes, good afternoon. My comment relates to the millions of people that have been adopted as infants and their offspring. By law, the racial and ethnic data at birth is unknown. I find it to be offensive, very offensive, to be asked to supply race and or ethnicity. It is no business of the government what my color is or what I look like. For this reason, I beg you to allow the option in all government forms to simply decline to answer. I should not have to give it an excuse or tell some government agency that I was adopted, and I don't know. I also note, as a matter of policy, that the country of France has wisely come to its senses and no longer asks questions about race or ethnicity. The option to decline to answer will eliminate the need to guess widely each time a form is filled out. And lastly, I resent the arbitrary extension of detail simply for political purposes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing your views with us today. We appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're ready for our next caller. Operator?
Derek Williams, Black or African American. Sir, your line is open.
Greetings. Can you hear me?
We can, Derek.
Fantastic. I want to say thank you for holding this town hall today, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing at the OMB. I am actually calling today because my What I would like to see is I would like to see the persons referred to today as Black or African American, specifically those persons who descend from persons who were enslaved in chattel slavery, with a specific category referred to as American freedmen. There's a distinction between the status of freedmen and American freedmen, which could be used as an ethnicity to specify this specific and unique group. I also do not think that it would be appropriate to name our group after an institution, as no human being descends from an institution, a small and technical point, but an important one nonetheless. Therefore, I find that American freedmen would be the most efficient terminology and specific group for our people, because that is a status that only persons who descend from persons who were enslaved and emancipated in this country hold. With that, I'd like to conclude and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Have a great day.
Thank you. I mean, this is certainly a key issue and subject, but I appreciate you sharing your feedback on it as well.
And operator,
You're welcome.
We have our next caller.
Tanya Hernandez, ma'am, your line is now open.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Caterina Hernandez. I'm a law professor at Fordham Law School, where I'm an associate director of its Center on Race, Law, and Justice. I am also a member of the Latino is Not a Race collective of over 30 organizations opposing the proposal to eliminate the two-question format. As an Afro-Latina civil rights scholar who understands the need for accurate data to properly enforce our nation's anti-discrimination laws, I am concerned that collapsing the Latino-Hispanic ethnic identity into a list of racial categories, with Black in particular, risks obscuring the number of Afro-Latinos and the monitoring of socioeconomic status differences of Latinos across race that exist. The option to check all that apply does not adequately attend to how listing Latino as commensurate with Black situates the Black category as principally belonging to African Americans, regardless of what a form may state. Indeed, the 2015 National Content Test Report shows that the proposed combined question recorded a race for significantly fewer Latinos, both statistically and substantively. This threatens to aggravate the long-standing problem with undercounting our nation's individuals with Black ancestries. Latinos who do select a race and add ethnicity have been repeatedly and wrongly coded as some other race, and thus systematically mischaracterized. Importantly, we need data that can measure disparities amongst Latinos. As I document in the book, Racial Innocence, Unmasking Latino Anti-Black Bias, and the Struggle for Equality, there are distinct that vary for Latinos if they are visibly Afro-Latino, and too often, Latino decision makers deny Afro-Latinos access. This is much needed racially specific data that should not be sacrificed. Afro-Latino scholars have better reforms. I'm closing. We have better reforms for addressing that. But first, we need to be allowed a seat at the table to share our expertise. Invite us, and we will come. But first, OMB should do no harm. This means retaining the two-question formulation for now. Thank you very much for your time.
So I'll just say that we certainly appreciate hearing all perspectives on our proposal. So we thank you for your comment. And I would just encourage individuals to look at our Federal Register notice. There's an actual link to some of the key research that was relied upon when developing these proposals. And I would just invite people to look at the Census Bureau's extensive research and see how the Census Bureau interpreted the results of that work. So thank you very much for your comment.
And operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Christiana Bennett, your line is now open for comments.
Hi, I will keep it short and sweet. I am of mixed race. My mother was white, European, and my father Puerto Rican, Cherokee Indian, and Black. And I think that there should be a multiracial option if you must, have a category for race or racial identity. I would prefer, like another caller had said, that, you have the option to decline to answer, just don't answer. But multiracial, definitely. I'm a mixture of many things, and I don't place one thing above the other. I am all. So I like a multiracial category. I would like that to be added. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. Appreciate it.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Tyranny Randolph, ma'am, your line is now open.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. My name is Tyranny Randolph, and I'm here to express my support for American freedmen being the ethnic designation for Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves. Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves have a unique history in this nation. We've inherited the debt accrued by this nation from over 250 years of chattel slavery to over 100 years of government-sanctioned anti-Black racism. About 500 years of torment from this country. The government established the Freedmen's Bureau to specifically address our needs. The Bureau closed, but the status remains, and as seen in states like California, government departments to serve freedmen are being brought back, hence reactivating the status. The ethnic designation will be for Black Americans who can show and prove that they are descendants of American slaves, hence the freedman status. We are different from a Black person here in the U.S. and other countries, like someone mentioned before, Jamaica, Cuba, Nigeria, Brazil, and others, since we are the direct descendants of the people who built this nation, fought for this nation, but still experienced centuries of racial terrorism that have resulted in us having the deepest disparities in all areas of quality of life. The American Freedman designation is very important because my lineage and ancestors are distinct, and we should be called what we are and not grouped in with others like we are all just one big person. We're not. I can't call myself Jamaican. Jamaicans shouldn't be allowed to call themselves the Black American freedmen because we are different. We are unique and we deserve our own designation. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. We're certainly going to take your comment as well as others to inform the working group's efforts.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Sophia Armand, ma'am, your line is open now.
Thank you so much. Good day, everyone. Appreciate all of your work. My name is Sophia Armand. I'm the co-director of Armenian American Action Network and a scholar in MENA, or what we call MENA American Studies. Our organization today speaks in support of a MENA checkbox on the United States Census and urge that it must include an Armenian subcategory checkbox within the MENA category. Armenian American Action Network is an advocacy and research organization specifically dedicated to Armenian American civil rights and research. Our organization represents and organizes thousands of Armenian Americans across the U.S. Today, we speak on behalf of a coalition of Armenian American organizations anchored by the largest Armenian membership organization in the country, the ANCA-WR. We join other MENA organizations in calling for the checkbox and emphasize the need for Armenian community input and classification within this category. Armenians are a transnational group in the Middle Eastern and North African region whose ancestry spans and crosses current-day nation states. Armenian Americans, like Assyrians and other transnational groups, must be included in these efforts. Armenian Americans overwhelmingly support census classification, are in the top 3 largest MENA populations in this country numerically, historically, and must not be invisibilized as a group in this fight. Armenians have been fighting for accurate classification in the U.S. Census for 30 years and urge you as our policymakers to hear our calls. Armenian Americans currently do not see themselves and their experiences accurately reflected in the census. They have long histories of refugeehood, racialization, immigration, and marginalization, and now, especially post 9/11. Lack of accurate census classification impacts every facet of our lives as Americans. For example, Armenian Americans, because of a lack of federal data, are denied equal healthcare in the United States, directly impacting our community's lives. Doctors and other healthcare professionals currently turn to systems primarily like the Middle Eastern surnames list to provide basic care to Armenians in the U.S. and have access to necessary healthcare research for our community. This list, much in our advocacy work, primarily relies on last names in the face of the absence of data, which does not capture thousands and thousands of Armenians, including people like my family, whose names were stolen in the Armenian genocide in Turkey, where we are from. A self-identifying checkbox would...
I'm sorry, Sophia, we're at 2 minutes.
Oh, no problem. All we want to say is thank you so much for your vital efforts. Please count MENA in. This is a wonderful initiative, and we really think it's important that we address Armenians within this checkbox as one of the largest groups from the region. Thank you so much again. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you for coming to speak to us on behalf of yourself and your organization. And this seems like a good time to bring up again that we hope everyone who wants to share written comments with us will use the links that we have provided up here to go to the Federal Register, submit written comments to that Federal Register notice. Thank you.
And with that, operator, can we have our next caller?
LaShawn Holmes, your line is open.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm LaShawn. I'm a Black American, and as far as the proposal for collecting race and ethnicity, I personally agree with one of the previous callers that was saying to just use ethnic classifications and be recognized by your ancestry. I personally agree with that, as well as the point of clarifying the Black American category, the box. I'm sorry, I can't say the whole word, which also aligns with our priority of ensuring that the standards better reflect the diversity of the American people. Gratefully, I know there was someone earlier that was talking about our origins. Gratefully, Black Americans today went through their ethnogenesis on American soil, which, and for anyone that doesn't know, ethnogenesis is the process by which a group of people become ethnically distinct, or the formation and development of an ethnic group. So my suggestions, as far as Black American, I feel like it should say a person having origin to North America who descends from a free person of color or descendant of chattel slavery in North America who were reclassified to Indian, Negro, mulatto, colored, or African American. I also feel that continental African should be added, and I feel it should say a person who has origins to the African continent or migrated to America from an African country. Caribbean American, a person who has origins to a Caribbean country or migrated to America.
I'm sorry, LaShawn, we're at 2 minutes.
You said I am at it?
Yes, we're at 2 minutes now.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time today.
LaShawn, I do want to thank you for your comments, though, and your suggestions on what you think the standards should look like. Appreciate it.
Operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Van Mosley, now your line is open for comments. Yes, your line is open.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm a Black American. I could trace my lineage past the 1865 census and also from U.S. chattel slavery. I would like to say that freedmen is not a good term for the Black American culture as an identifier for all Black Americans, because all Black Americans were not freedmen. Freedmen is a disparity that happened. We were formerly enslaved. We have done so much for this country, from fighting in every war. We have, by the knowledge that is given from us from America, that we've been here at least since 1619. So we was here before the establishment of the nation. So we have a distinct culture and we brought it to the world. We are innovators. We have created over 50,000 patents. So we are more than just an enslaved person. So I would like that to be, that is offensive to me. It's a disparity, and it's racist to continue to be remained as a disparity such as an enslaved person constantly, generation after generation. That does not fit the Black American culture or the people. It's an organized effort to change our name yet again. We have been reclassified over and over and over, and it has to end. I would rather be called a Black American and to be distinct from other
persons that are melanated from different backgrounds from Africa. I would like to say continental African for persons that come from the diaspora from Africa. And I would like for, if you're from the Caribbean, it has to be distinct as well. And it should not say American Freeman, it should say American Black, okay? Or, and I would rather say Black American rather than African American. But Freeman is not a good term for the whole Black culture. And let's see, yada, yada. Yeah, Freeman could be anyone as well, so it can't be a specific race. So I'll end with that. Thank you for letting me speak.
We're at 2 minutes now.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
And operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Greg Vincent, sir, your line is open.
Hello, it's Greg Dixon, I guess you're saying. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, Greg.
Okay, so in 1864, I'm here to advocate for American freemen as our status. One, American freemen will tie us to the political status of freemen. Y'all work for the federal government, and y'all are working for the federal government that established an entire agency to serve freemen. The question we need to ask ourselves, who were the freemen? The freemen were those who were formerly enslaved by the United States of America, but also their descendants. Even after the Freedmen's Bureau closed down, even after the betrayal of Reconstruction, Supreme Court in Connecticut ruled that freemen refers to those who were formerly enslaved in the U.S. and their descendants. So all Black Americans today are freemen. The same way a Native Hawaiian has a child and that child is a Native Hawaiian, or a Cherokee has a child and that child is a Cherokee, we as Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves are freemen. American freeman is an ethnic designation that would tie us to that special status. And y'all work in the government. Y'all know that legislation is done based for groups based on their status. In 1864, Congressman Elliott said that these people are owed the debt, referring to Black Americans, not because they are Black, but because they've been wronged for generations and they've inherited the wrongs done to their slave ancestors. If you look at the data, there are still large disparities that put Black Americans to the bottom. Immigrants from other countries who come here, Jamaicans, Nigerians, they all usually fare better than Black Americans. We have a unique debt. My family's been in the Beaufort County, Jasper County, South Carolina area since the mid-1700s. It is insulting to say to me that a Jamaican who just gets off a plane 2 years ago is Black American like me. No, they're not. So American freeman is the status I am promoting because it's the ethnic designation I'm promoting because it ties us to the freedman status that is still politically recognized. And I'm going to end it with this. Right now, as we speak, California is opening or making a motion to open an Office of Freedmen Affairs, Texas and South Carolina. So the status still exists. American freemen will be an ethnic designation to tie us to that status. And how will we prove it? You will have to be able to show you are a Black American who's a descendant of American slaves, the same way the Japanese had to show that they were Japanese and they were descendants of the Japanese who were thrown in concentration camps. All Black Americans can do that. So I hope y'all will consider the precedent American freemen has and make that our ethnic designation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg, for taking the time to come and talk with us today. We appreciate it.
And operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Pamela Denise Long, ma'am, your line is open.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. My name is Pamela Denise Long. I'm a 7th generation American and documented descendant of U.S. slaves. I'd previously spoken to OMB about how census data can, should, and must support lineage equity in the United States. So my recommendations are the following. Keep the 2-question format. Do not include race and ethnicity in one question. Our nation is not at a state of delivery on equity where we can do so. Conflating race and ethnicity too soon is an erasure of America's founding population. Any identity that aggregates race and ethnicity contradicts the important call to disaggregate data for things like health inequities, drug efficacy, educational disparities, and the like. Do not remove Negro. It's too important to the historical record and documentation of multi-generational Black Americans, that being the descendants of U.S. chattel slaves. Reserve all the monikers that American freedmen have used in our 250-year history in the United States. That includes Negro and African American as the racial identity, and American freedmen as the ethnicity. In the implementation of the Freedmen's Bureau, they ensured no white person could be classified as American freedmen. Furthermore, when we're identifying and defining the American freedmen category, it should be written as descendants of U.S. chattel slaves, not American descendants of slaves, because that is confusing once a person becomes an American. It's about those people who were in the United States prior to emancipation and their descendants. Please collect racial and ethnic data on the maternal and paternal lines, including race, ethnicity, country of origin. And lastly, please ensure that integrity is baked into a person's self-identified lineage and that there are consequences for impersonating the sacred lineage of U.S. chattel slaves. The recommendations that I've provided here today will also be provided in writing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts today, and we will take that back to the working group.
Operator, can we have our next caller?
Yes, and callers, if you could please state your affiliation as well, if you have an opportunity to do that. Our next now is from Ken Skarasaki. Sir, your line is now open.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, Ken Skarasaki, stakeholder. Just piggybacking off the previous caller, I think lineage has to be respected, and I'm not Black, but I can really empathize on just people's need to be counted and to be recognized, because that has never, our narratives have been silenced. I'm a fifth generation, and I get lost amongst the huge diversity of Asian Americans. Most Asian Americans have came after 1965, and I respect that. But there's a whole bunch of us who came pre-1965, and I would like that to sort of be recognized on a census. A lot of us were here pre-65. We paved the way. We are the ones that went into internment camps. We are the ones that had our communities burned down, got displaced. And people who came after, immigrants, children of immigrants, what have you, I'm all for it, but our narratives need to be counted. And I would like that distinction. Do you have lineage pre-1965 when our immigration policy in this country changed? Thank you.
Thank you. We very much appreciate your perspective, and we'll definitely share that back.
And operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Val Davis, your line is open. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you, Val.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Valerie Davis. I am the founder of Elevate First, nonprofit health organization. Black women. I have 6 quick things that I want to mention. One is that I support the removal of any reference to race. It's a harmful political. 2, I would ask you to examine the use of America and American and contain this work to the United States of America. Many people outside of the United States find it offensive that we keep calling ourselves Americans. They are, and it's scientifically sound to talk about people in the United States. Number 3, I support their elimination of acronyms and not collapsing important and distinct groups into a combined group. Number 4 is that I support the use of all that apply. I already have planned. Number 5, I absolutely support the recognition of descendants of chattel slavery as a category, however you figure that out. And then number 6, importantly, to outline how you intend to influence the same work at the state and local level, both funding as well as guidance. So I offer organizations like mine who are community-based to help socialize this not only in community, but in agencies and employers, in schools, et cetera. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for your comments.
And operator, we're ready for our next caller.
And Jolly Jones, your line is open now.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for opening this discussion. I'm Anjali Jones, System Director with Common Spirit Health, the largest nonprofit health system in the country. I'm a Southeast Asian woman and feel strongly that the higher category of Asian needs to be broken out further. Putting all of Asia together is a homogenization of the diverse ethnic and cultural origins of what is, in 2023, nearly 60% of the world's population. Our traditions, languages, cultures, heritages, and identities vary greatly from one country to the next, which means there are significant data implications across government and industries by lumping all of Asians into one big bucket category. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your comment. Appreciate it.
Operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Tia Marie Sanders out of Michigan. Ma'am, your line is open.
Hello, hopefully you can hear me. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the OMB for allowing us to have the opportunity to share what our thoughts are and breaking down what this experience has been. I do look at it as a refreshing change that we are now able to have input for us, by us, about us. And so I just want to agree with many of the sentiments and to raise that, one, I do believe we should and agree that we should eliminate race. And I'm really surprised that that was not one of the recommendations of the OMB. So I'm curious about who that panel truly is and in what vein are they constructing a new way to reclassify all people. The other thing I think that I want to lift is that there's also a consensus from other ethnicities as well that agreed that race no longer defines us or clearly represents who we are. And so I would like to see that term sunset. I also agree with all of the terms as it relates to Black Americans who are descendants of chattel slavery. And I do believe that that can actually even be aggregated out more because there are those distinctions for lineage. And I do believe that we have a unique opportunity right here, right now, today, as we think about how these things are worked out. And I agree with the last caller as well, that this conversation and the recommendations and how you come about to the final conclusion has to be with us included. Every group that has come on here, I'm in Michigan, for example, we have over 175 different languages just spoken in 3 counties. And I would imagine if all of those folks could actually come on this line, they would have the same thought. The way it stands today needs to be completely removed, and we need to look at how do we properly identify everyone. Thank you all, and my recommendation is that we definitely do lineage-based foundational Black Americans so that we are properly represented.
We appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
And operator, do we have any other callers?
Kelly Pryor, your line is now open.
Thank you. And thank you guys for doing what you were doing and the work that you have ahead of you. My name is Kelly Pryor. I am calling from Nevada. I am calling also on behalf of the Nevada Freedmen Association. Our people who survived U.S. chattel slavery and their descendants were categorized as freedmen in 1866. A bill was signed by Abraham Lincoln solidifying this. The founding fathers made it painfully obvious who they were intending and targeting to integrate into society. We have somehow allowed other people in positions of power to create confusion with Black, BIPOC, people of color, minority, not to mention foundational Black Americans, American descendants of slavery, which are social media invented terms that have been trademarked as the founders of those groups salivate like Pavlov's dog, hoping that OMB will use their designation so they can cash in on their internet grip. OMB, please do the right thing by granting the term freedmen to be our designation. This designation will stop these harmful terms like BIPOC, people of color, minority, Black, or Black African American, which just mask freedmen's socioeconomic shortcomings because the correct data is never being collected so that we can obtain the necessary resources or the correct allocation of such resources can even reach the intended freedmen target. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate your perspective and representing your organization as well.
Operator, can we have our next caller?
Rhonda Bramlett, Black American. Ma'am, your line is open.
Hello. Yes, my name is Rhonda, and I was reaching out today from Los Angeles, representing the Crenshaw district of Los Angeles, California. And I would like to be noted as a Black American, a person having origins to North America, who is a descendant of a freed person, person of color, a Negro, mulatto, and African American. We would like to designate African people so that we can have our own category as a continental African, and we would like to designate Caribbean American so that they can have their own designation. We ask that you retire the name African American to refer to a Black American. We ask that you retire the name Freedman or American Freedman. I've been a Black American my whole life, descending from Yazoo, Mississippi in America, and we have never used the term freedman. And we ask that you please don't change our ethnicity. Do not ethnicite us this way. I do understand other callers want to be referred to as American freedmen, but I do believe you should keep something general to satisfy everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is an area that the working group is looking into, and so we definitely appreciate your input.
And operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Christopher, Black American. Sir, your line is open.
Thank you. I'm Christopher in Charlotte, North Carolina. I would like to ask that we use the term Black American, a person that has origin to North America who descends from a free person of color or descendants of chattel slavery in North America, where we were classified as either Indian Negro, Negro mulatto, color, or African American. I also ask that you separate us from the continental African diaspora so that they can have their own designation along with Caribbean Americans as well. And names that need to be retired is freedmen, American freedmen, and African American, terms that are used to describe Black Americans in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate hearing your perspective. Thanks.
Operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Bonita Lacey with USA Ministries. Ma'am, your line is open.
Hi, my name is Bonita Lacey. I'm calling in reference to what you're asking about. And there's two things. I think there needs to be an immigrant category, and immigrant needs to be described like how far back, if it's 1965, 1940, etc. But there needs to be an immigrant category under each of the racial or ethnic classifications, because most people who are immigrants, they say they're Armenian American, they're Jamaican American, Caribbean American, etc. And they're under all different types of categories. I think that needs to be under all the categories. And then as far as the name, I think that ethnicity is tied to lineage, land, culture, and commonality. For that, I think that American descendants of slaves is a good name, but I think we need to add African American descendants of slaves to that name because it's tied to a land or both lands where we descended from Africa, the native land, and then American, the land our ancestors were forced in. And I think that we need to respect and honor our ancestors who were slaves. That's why we have the name descendants of slaves. I've heard freedmen saying people descended from slaves. Everyone is saying people who are descendants of slaves, for as Black, African Americans, freedmen, etc. And I think freedmen can be under that category as African American descendants of slaves who are freedmen, who are mulattoes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that needs to be categorized that way because it gives us linkage to land, to our ancestors, and to our culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Benita. I really appreciate your perspective and you being on the town hall today.
Okay. Operator, we'll take our next caller now.
Michael Carranza, sir, your line is open.
Hello, I am an academic and scientist, and I applaud these efforts to move past race as a social construct and give U.S. citizens the opportunity to define themselves. However, I'm worried that U.S. and world hasn't taken the necessary steps in the corporate and service sector to ensure that these new recommendations don't harm the people they're trying to serve with these changes. First of all, as a Mexican-American, Latino, Amerindigenous person from the Americas, I object to the possibility of blurring the lines and reducing the power of Alaska Native and American Indian tribes who are domestic dependent nations and the victims of the worst and most egregious health, economic, and political neglect in the United States. And as such, they would be in competition with the indigenous categories from urban areas, North, Central, and South America. Treaty obligations come first. Second, the terms Latino and Hispanic codified during the Nixon administration have been problematic in the modern day to further the Spanish caste system here in Anglo-America, as people from Latin America comprise the largest minority group at 70 million strong. Not all Latinos are united. As there are parallel efforts in the fields of genomics, anthropology, biomedicine, and pharmaceutics, I see these efforts towards the American melting pot or we are all immigrants narrative that push people towards individual rights and property, making them subcontractors rather than collectives of people groups for their own social justice. These efforts of federal and research definitions will divide and conquer and make us all the bioproperty of nation states and corporations. So unless the U.S. works towards to restore Amerindigenous nations and then hobble, slow down, regulate, or stop global corporate efforts to create patent plantations around the world and their lobbyists that manipulate world governments toward their own biopiracy, I would seriously reconsider these recommendations in the light of larger capitalist landscapes and movements. We are not all treated as Americans, nor do we all believe in the American project, but we do assert our claim on its resources and the benefits from those capitalized resources as we have a birthright of 40,000 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment.
And operator, we'll take our next caller now.
Thank you. And prior to your comments, could you please state your affiliation as well? Our next is from Quentin, and sir, your line is now open.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Quentin, and my affiliation is Grassroots Activist. I'm asking the OMB to establish and add the American Moor ethnic category for SPD 15. An American Moor is defined as a Black person having lineage in the enslaved Black peoples in the U.S. and origins from West Africa and West Central Africa, in an area that would become the United States. An American Moor ethnicity would differentiate Black and African Americans who are descended from enslaved people from other Black and African Americans like Nigerian American, Somali American. And while Moor isn't a distinct and self-defined people, like Bantu, Moor has been used to define Black racial groups in Africa, but unlike Bantu, Moor has actually been used to define racial groups in America. Moors was the first used in 1587, dating back to the American colonial period in the 13 colonies. Three then British colonial people, known as the Mellons, were both descended from Black people and called themselves Moor by the then English colonial overlords. And I would love to establish more to differentiate those people who are descended from slaves when it comes to both identifying in the census, getting government assistance and government help and political initiatives from the federal level on down. Policymakers do use the U.S. Department of Statistics and OBMYN racial categories to target communities of people. And without this ethnic designation or any type of ethnic designation to differentiate the two, we fall in league of either getting grouped together with everybody that is Black and African American, or not being visible to policymakers at all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us, Quentin, and for sharing your comments on American Wars. Appreciate it.
And operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Malik Ray, your line is open.
Yes, thank you. My name is Khalik Ray. I'm from Miami, Florida. Data collection standards are very important to me as I'm a user experience designer in the tech industry. I support American Descendants of Slavery ethnic designation, basically being enshrined in the institutional memory. American Descendants of Slavery is the most clear, concise way to describe our group lineally, ethnically, and politically. Martin Luther King preferred this name for himself and his community in his last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. American identifies our origin, similar to how the 1950 census added American to the American Indian option to distinguish from people born in India. Descendants identifies people who come from specific ancestors, and slavery identifies the specific institution we descend from. American freedman is an archaic term that was a designation that hasn't been used since 1872. The last freedman, Peter Mills, died in 1972, while there are still tens of millions of American descendants of slavery in the U.S. today. Furthermore, it obscures and conflates the experiences of Native freedmen who are fighting for their rights today in Native territory. American descendants of slavery should be defined as citizens who identify as Negro, colored, Black, or African American, and can trace their ancestry to at least one person who identifies as Negro, colored, Black, and was enslaved in the United States of America between 1776 and 1865. We can keep, in terms of the categories, minimum subcategories, we can keep the Black minimum category, but we must sunset African American terms as it confuses us with continental Africans. All Black Americans should be able to identify with their specific group. For American descendants of slavery, that means ancestry, but for many other immigrant groups, that means like Haitian American or Ghanaian American. The significance of Black Americans who descend from U.S. slavery is important to distinguish. While there are descendants of slavery around the world, the U.S. should be focused on identifying and meeting the needs of the people who descend from American institution of slavery that happened in America. We can collect data based on wealth, medical, and educational outcomes so that policy can be used to craft equitable policies to address our unique needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalik. I really appreciate your perspective.
And operator, can we have our next caller, please?
Consuela Davis, your line is open, ma'am.
Hi, good evening to everyone. I am Consuelo Davis. I am representing concerned Black American citizens, as well as my own agency of Goddess Health and Wellness. I am calling in today. I want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. As I began, I think it's very important that we utilize the American freedman designation for persons that are originating from combined ethnicities within what is now the United States prior to 1865 and is descended from persons emancipated in the United States. I think this ethnic identity is very important. I do have some suggestions for you all in defining American freedmen as including individuals who descend from those emancipated peoples of the United States prior to 1865. It includes individuals who were previously classified as Negro, Black, colored, mulatto, and any of the Gullah Geechee and the 5 civilized tribes can come also under the American freedmen. I also have suggestions for you in how you can define the sub-Saharan African, which includes anyone or nationalities, ethnic groups originating in Angola, South Africa, Botswana, Cameroon, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Liberia, Cape Verde, Madagascar, Rwanda, Somalia. I think you get where I'm going. And then you can also use the designation of Caribbean. The category of Caribbean islander includes all individuals who identify with one or more nationalities or ethnic groups originating in Aruba, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Cayman Islands, Curacao, Guyana, Haiti, U.S. Virgin Islands, Jamaica, and you get where I'm going with that.
So those are some of my suggestions. I also am in agreement with the disaggregating the data. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in agreement with disaggregating the data and keeping the race and ethnic identity. Thank you.
Thank you for your suggestions, Consuela, and we will take those back to the working group.
And operator, can we take our next caller, please?
Brianna Cobb, your line is open.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Triana.
Hi, I'm calling from the Census Bureau, and I want to deviate from everyone else and have a question to ask. I'm going to use my 2 minutes to hopefully get that answered. I saw on one of your slides how you wanted to get rid of the majority and minority, and I kind of missed the explanation, and I wanted to see if you could elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, hi. Just in the interest of time and to make sure we hear from everyone, we are not going to be taking questions today, but I would direct you to our Federal Register notice, which I believe does a pretty good job of answering that question. And then if you still have questions, then I think you'll be able to find an email address on on the SPD revision website. Thank you.
Operator, can we take our next caller, please?
Bell, your line is now open.
Yes, I'm a Black American. My ancestors have been Black on paper in the 1850s, 1860, 1870, 1880, 1890 U.S. Census. They were Black. Black American is an ethnicity, not a race. And we have a paper trail. We can prove it. Freedman is not in any of my ancestors' paperwork. And the term freedman is very offensive. It is 2023. I don't want anybody referring to me or my children as a freedman. And also, I can go on Ancestry.com right now and find white freedmen. There were definitely white freedmen. And that's all I got to say. I'm a Black American, and it's an ethnic group.
Thank you. I appreciate your passion and appreciate you participating today.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller?
Yes, sir. Stephen Pettis, your line is open.
Hi, yes. How you been? Thank you for giving me a chance to speak. My name is Stephen Pettis, and I'm calling about, I'm a Black American, but, I believe foundational Black Americans is a term to be used because foundational Black Americans are the original people of America. We built this country, and it goes back to my lineage as to where even with the Native Americans, excuse me, have excluded the Black natives that were originally here first before anyone else. So then we got reclassified as Negro, mulatto, colored, etc., Black. And it's a foundational Black American is a distinctive term that no one can coin it, no one can take it away from us, and it's a distinction term that can separate us from other African continent people from the diaspora, and the Caribbean. And so I believe foundational Black Americans should be classified as Black Americans as the original people of America. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you taking time to participate in the town hall today. Thank you very much.
And operator, we'll take our next caller, please.
Medhaven Palan, your line is open, sir.
Hi, this is Madhavan Palan. I come from Global Health Strategist, United Nations Headquarters. I would like to appreciate the good work of U.S. Census Bureau during the 54th session of United Nations Statistical Commission. And I'm looking forward to statistical data of this particular report. Thank you. Appreciate the efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Operator, next caller, please.
Karen Smith, your line is open.
Assignments from previous times to assess the cluster variance and stability, right? So that's the kind of broad strokes what this I think will do. So then that we could, once we run any cluster analysis, we could set that up and then see how persistent that is on any of the products for that matter, right? But starting, with Homeschool Plus, and so, and there's some things I'm investigating on clusters that they can be used potentially potentially for unearthing causal influences as well, right? And I think there's a really promising, line of that. And I think we're trying to find these ways of doing causal inference, right? We kicked it off with Steve, but that process was too slow, didn't turn up enough. I mean, we got persistence,
Excuse me, caller. Can you hear us?
Do that, but it didn't turn up enough.
Operator, I think we need to go to our next caller, please.
Other ways that we can try to.
Dr. Lisa R. Brown. Dr. Brown, your line is open, ma'am.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
We can, Dr. Brown.
Okay, great. My name is Dr. Lisa Brown, of course, and I'm an assistant professor for graduate studies at the University of the Incarnate Word. Statistical data collection and analysis for research and policy purposes are by nature a quantitative data gathering approach. Establishing a more granular population category for Black American U.S. freedmen descendants allowed mixed methodologists, scholars, and researchers like myself the ability to mine secondary source data to perform deeper levels of qualitative analysis about complex human conditions. A Black American U.S. freedmen descendant data point will allow academics and professional practitioners to gather rich and deep descriptive data to be used toward the explanation of generational harms and conditions among vulnerable groups. For example, we can merge longitudinal and developmental data analysis to triangulate results yielding baseline and preliminary program evaluation data used to direct government program planning for public services and need-based interventions. By creating the unique race, national origin, and ethnic classification for the formerly enslaved descendants, the federal government will be best positioned for generational harm and folkways practices impacting Black Americans today. Our population data was first captured as slaves via the first 1790 census, only a few decades after the nation's founding. We do not support the removal of Negro among the terms historically associated with our group and accomplishments like the Negro League baseball team. We deserve an accurate accounting based on our unique history and personhood in America. The Black American U.S. freedmen descendant term and definition offered during our listening session last November would assist federal government agencies by avoiding collection standards and definitions that result in false impressions about the cultural challenges, habits of health, and well-being outcomes for long-standing populations in the United States. I agree with the MENA category and separate category for Hispanic Latino origin. We will also be submitting a detailed document in support of these positions with accompanying reference list. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, for your comments.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Max Benown, your line is now open.
Hi, yes. My name is Max Fennell. I am known as being the first Black American professional triathlete, and I think it's very important that we go with the designation of Black American simply because that is as hold precedent for us. But most importantly, I think that definition should be seen as Black American, a person having origins to North America who descends from free person of color, or descends of chattel slavery in North America who are reclassified to Indian Negro, Negro, mulatto, colored, or African American. I also think those that are from Africa should be known as continental Africans, and those that are from the Caribbean should be known as Caribbean American. I think it's very important that we retire freedmen, American freedmen, African Americans to describe Black Americans, simply because I don't have freedmen anywhere in my paperwork. And as I mentioned when I started this out, I'm known as being the first Black American professional triathlete. I'm not known as the first emancipated slave professional triathlete, and I find freedmen very offensive. So please, it needs to be Black American. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you sharing your accomplishment and also your perspectives on updating the standards.
Operator, we'll take our next caller.
Gabby Vaya of Los Angeles, California, your line is open. Gabby Vaya, check your mute button.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us, taking this commentary. First, I want to hold up the need that I'm hearing in this whole call for specificity. right? That's, I think, for me, the through line that I'm hearing in so many of these comments. And to that point, I wanted to, well, first, I'm sorry, I should say I'm calling from the Tongva land. I'm in Los Angeles, California. I want to speak to the, continuing that line, I want to speak to the specificity of leaving the designation for Chicana, Chicano, and Chicanx, not fighting with people. I think all three should be included. In line with what so many callers have expressed today, our ancestors were here before there was an America, and also speaks to the specificity of a particular group of Mexican Americans that have been here again since the establishment of the country, and losing that, largely would affect us and continue to be underrepresented and impact measures for us around geography, health, land, poverty, etc. So I think it's really important. I personally, I'm all about having the race and ethnicity take up 2-3 pages. It is such a large part of who we are. We live in the U.S. This is just a reality. There will be the people who won't like it. The more specific you get, the more it will annoy people because, it's not fast and it's quick and I want to get to the next page. But having that hasn't served us yet. So we might as well, and now that we're taking this opportunity to switch, we might as well continue to unpack those pieces. So I can see the same, any large category, whether it's, Asian and Latino, we're going to have those same issues if there's only one large category. So the more specific we can get, the better. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Operator, do we have another caller?
Yes, sir. Dawn Page, your line is open.
Good afternoon. Hi. I wanted to start with saying, again, this is Dawn Page. I'm calling with Legacy Consulting, LLC, and representing my family that goes back prior to the founding of this country. I disagree with collapsing race and ethnicity. I believe that has the potential to undermine any future claims that would be tied into any type of historical nomenclature attached to our group. I am calling in favor of American freedmen as an ethnic designation. The OMB must federally recognize American freedmen as a separate and distinct reporting category. Failure to do so would surely result in the acceleration of the structural violence against American freedmen families, as structural violence is directly correlated to poverty and lack of advocacy. By adding MENA, while at the very same time denying American freedmen would be a direct violation of our 14th Amendment rights on the basis of nation of origin discrimination, as they will now be able to enforce civil rights that American freedmen fought for and fight for those rights for the benefit of their group. The OMB denial of American freedmen of that same benefit would continue to disable our fight for recognition and liberation. The OMB is empowered to bestow humanity and recognition on the hated freedmen, and we trust that the right thing will be done. MENA, ADOS, FBA acronyms are insufficient. I wanted to say to Janet Yellen, who cares about Silicon Valley Bank, bail out the Freedmen's Bank of the $1.2 trillion plus in today's dollars.
I'm sorry, we're at 2 minutes.
Can I say add American freedmen, remove African American from the Black American category, remove Haitian, keep Negro, remove minority and majority, and again, Freedmen's Bank. Bail us out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Don, for joining us, sharing your thoughts. Appreciate it.
And operator, we'll move on to our next caller now. Thank you.
Mandy, your line is open, Mandy. Yes, Mandy, go ahead. I I hear you typing. Please go ahead, Mandy. I'll have to move on. I apologize. Our next is from Josiah Speech, and your
Hello?
line is now open.
Hello?
Josiah Speech? Yes.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay. How y'all doing today? I definitely want to thank you guys for allowing us this opportunity. Let me just first say that I would not like to be referred to as an emancipated slave, which is an American freedman. That is an emancipated slave. I feel that it's very disrespectful. The Freedmen's Bureau was abolished. The bill was put in as HR 1548 back in 1871. So that term that was used is nothing but a class or status that was used for emancipated slaves throughout history. I would like to use the term foundational Black American, which is a codified term that locks everything in, from the descendants of chattel slavery to the people that were of Negroid race or Black race that were here before the transatlantic slave trade. Foundation means of relating to or forming or serving as a base or foundation. Whites, Asians, Natives, Hispanic, Pacific Islanders, as well as other groups are considered races. And yes, we are members of the Black race, but we are a specific lineage of people within the Black race that designates us to the foundation of the United States of America. We have identified as Black Americans on many government documents such as birth certificates, driver's licenses, marriage licenses, and death certificates. Also articles, artifacts. We also have a Black History Month, as well as art and music. We have been recorded to be Black Americans for over 153 consecutive years up until this current day. We ask that the term foundational be added in front of the term Black American because we are of the distinct lineage that descended from the Black American chattel slaves who built the United States of America prior to 1865. I would not like to have a slave name attached anywhere inside of my ethnic group. Please do not call me an emancipated slave. Please do not call me a descendant of a slave. Call me a foundational Black American, which is all inclusive to those terms, freedmen, ADOS, GCOALS, or whatever other term that people are coming up to speak about. Foundational Black American cannot be remixed, and no immigrant group come into it because we are the foundation that built the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Lakeith, your line is now open.
Yes, hello. Thank you. You ladies and gentlemen look wonderful today. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with the public on this issue. Very important issue. I am from Montgomery, Alabama, the home of the Civil Rights Movement. My blood runs back to, this soil, this country. My family has no idea what a freedman is. They have no idea what an ADOS is or an FBA. But we are known the world over as Black Americans. So, I think that's very specific. I think it's important to be specific even for other communities when we're collecting this data, when it comes to Asian communities, when it comes to Hispanic communities. The more specific we can be, the more data we can collect, the better we're going to be able to analyze and solve problems, right? We can get the data, we can look and see what's really happening. So again, just to keep it short, I am a Black American, a foundational Black American. I'm not an acronym, I'm not any of that stuff. I'm not a member of any group, I have no affiliations. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day.
Thank you, really appreciate it.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Aisha, your line is now open, ma'am.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, I appreciate you setting up this afternoon's town hall. I am an up-and-coming social media blogger. I'm from New York City. I come from the Turner's descendant who can trace my lineage back to Southampton, Virginia. I want to be referred to as a Black American, not an African American, ADOS, FBA, or freedman. Let's keep things straightforward. On both sides of my family has ties to the U.S. Sure, we are members of the Black race, but we belong to a certain branch of the Black race that is recognized as the American nation's founding family. The term African American irritates me, such as it encompasses both the Caribbean and the African diaspora.
every other group delineates and have their own category. Now it's about time that us as Black Americans have our own category, and we should have that, and it should be respected. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Operator, we'll take our next caller.
American, ma'am, your line is open.
Hello, I'm calling today from California, and I wanted to request that the word Negro be back or added back onto the Black American language. For some reason that was omitted. We need Negro because that takes us back to the Portuguese, it takes us back to the Spanish, and it takes us back to their definition of Negro, which includes Blackamoor, which are the people who actually inhabited North America as well as North Africa. So I just want to make sure that that's added. We have people today who on their birth certificates have the word Negro. The next thing I want to talk about are the newcomers who are here. If you just arrived in the United States, you need your own box. I am requesting that Sub-Saharans, Atlantic Islanders, or Caribbeans to get their own box. They do not identify as Black in their homelands, and they don't wave Black flags. And lastly, I want to say that I am vehemently against the word and the usage of freedmen or any other hashtag or new name that was birthed within the last 10 years. We have several names to choose from, and it is very disrespectful to try and erase our lineage and our heritage and our legacy and add a trademark name. I also want to say that America is not synonymous with the United States. If you are participating in the United States, you would be a citizen. You are not an American. So I would ask that going forward, we stop doing a hyphenated Asian American or a hyphenated white American. People have origins, and if your origin is not aboriginal to this landmass that we call North America, then you are not an American, you are a citizen. Peace and love, and bye.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller, please.
KB, your line is now open. Yes.
Thank you for speak. I am a Black American and I am a military veteran, and I agree that race definitely needs to be thrown out of the equation, and we need to just ethnically identify. We would like to identify and be classified as Black Americans. We are the descendants of the Black people who were exploited out of free labor that built this country. We have a direct lineage to the United States of America, and we were reclassified as Black once we became citizens of the USA. We can be found as Black on the free inhabitant schedule, the 1830, 40, 50, 60, and 70 census report. We have legal documentation directly identifying us as Black. My original birth certificate says Black. To allow people who freely migrate to the USA to be able to identify as Black without having a direct lineage to America is a form of cultural and ethnic erasure. This is ethnocide against my lineage group. We are our own ethnic group uniquely, and we have our own cultural traditions. Everything my ancestors built in America was under the cultural and ethnic identity of being classified as Black. We've had Black Wall Street, historically Black colleges and universities, the Black Pride movement, Black History Month, and so many others. Therefore, to stop the ethnic erasure of my lineage by allowing other people from other land masses the ability to identify as a Black American without being connected by a lineage and their basis is a skin tone, we call for the following legally to be changed. Black American describes a person who has origins to North America, who is a descendant of chattel slavery in North America, or who descend from a free person of color who were reclassified to Indian Negro, Negro, mulatto, colored, or African American. A continental African is a person who has origins to the African continent and migrated to America from an African country. Caribbean American is a person who has origins to a Caribbean country and migrated to America from a Caribbean country. Names to be retired: FBA, freedmen, American freedmen, and African Americans to describe African Americans. I do not wish to be labeled as a freed slave, and I don't think other Black Americans would be happy to be labeled as a freed slave. So thank you for your time.
I appreciate you participating today, and also thank you for your military service.
Operator, we'll take our next caller.
Thank you. If you could please state your affiliation before your comment. Our next now is from PR. Your line is open.
Good afternoon. I'm a PR. I would consider myself an activist or researcher. Strangely enough, I would definitely want to address a few of the calls before me with the anti-Negro, anti-African rhetoric. I am calling in because I want to confer the American Negro. We have policies and federal legislation that speaks to that. We have Special Field Order 15 that is very specific to our people. It is the ultimate delineation when it comes to delineating our ethnicity, as well as combining the racial harms that we suffered up under that term from back then as well as to this day. I don't have race on my birth certificate, but my father and mother and grandmother and grandparents do have Negro, and they're still here. So that would be an additional harm in regards to eliminating that. American Negro needs to be restored to the classification because our people are still standing and still here. And for people that are masquerading as indigenous, aboriginal, and trying to align themselves to being Black, I think that's egregious, especially when they expound upon anti-Negro, anti-African sentiments. We acknowledge that we have ancestors that come from the slave trade. We do not deny the transatlantic slave trade. That is the equivalent of being a Holocaust denier. So I would definitely say for the OMB to keep in mind that our people are still here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join us and share your views today. Thanks.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Yvette Carnell, your line is now open.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you all for having me. And I want to say, I've heard a lot during this call about acronyms. I want to say as a part of the movement, the ADOS movement that started this conversation in around 2016, that the acronym American Descendants of Slavery is about slavery, the institution. It's not about seeing yourself as a slave. It's about the economics of it all. That poverty is still in the system from slavery, and so is that wealth. And that's why we want the ethnic term, American Descendants of Slavery. My mother was a sharecropper. Her family comes from slaves. That's why this is important to us. And when we talk about the perfect term or the perfect acronym, what we're also talking about is the fact that ADOS is now in the dictionary. There's no way and there's no reason that we should task the OMB with trying to reinvent the wheel in terms of the advocacy that we're doing. We've been doing this for almost a decade now, and we have the right acronym for the right time. And so this slavery, this institution, we have been erased within our own category. That's the problem here. You can't see our struggle anymore. We come from slavery, but our struggle is masked because the OMB is not disaggregating the data so that you can see us clearly, see our struggle clearly, see that we're very different in terms of outcomes from Black immigrants. That's what we want everybody to see, and that's why we need ADOS as our own ethnicity.
Thank you for joining us today and sharing your comments about ADOS.
Thank you.
Operator, we'll take our next caller, please.
William, your line is open, William.
Yes, my name is William Dickens. I'm with the ADOS Advocacy Foundation, and I am an American descendant of slavery. My parents, too, were sharecroppers and slaves, and I believe if we can get this disaggregation of the data, it would tie us to the institution in which we have been starved out and denied resources. We are the group that are, right now, you can only find one group in this country that are 53% of the homeless, and that is the American descendant of slavery. We are also the group where you got more Black men incarcerated than all women in the world. That still is the American descendant of slavery. And the only way to see these atrocities is to see our group without erasing it. Diversity and inclusion definitely is an eraser of our atrocities, American descendant of slavery in America. You got American descendant of slavery women that go to school, they got more degrees than anybody in the country, yet they make less money than anybody in the country with a degree. And they also got more debt than anybody in the country. So it's a unique group here. And regardless of what we understand, this country was built on that American descendants of slavery back, and that atrocity still is in our family, and we still carry that cost. And that's all I would like to say.
Thank you, William. I really appreciate hearing your perspective, and we will share back with the working group your perspective on ADOS.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller, please.
Dr. Clyde Hunters, your line is open. Dr. Hunters, check your mute button, please. I'll have to move on. Oh, there you go. Dr. Hunters, go ahead. Our next is from Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins. And ma'am, you're...
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for this opportunity to share comments and the work that you're doing. I am speaking primarily on behalf of the silent generation and baby boomers who are Black, and these are my comments. As it relates to the most accurate designation, Black people who have been in this country since 1619, AKA African Americans, there must be an understanding of the deep emotional trauma that has long existed around our identity. Our very existence in the United States has been one of repeated traumatization, beginning with our official designation as slaves. With that distinction came an erasure of who we were when we were stolen or purchased from our home in Africa. Our names were changed. Our language was forbidden. Our community was torn apart literally by the separation of familiar persons being deliberately placed in opposite quarters aboard the slave ship so that we couldn't communicate. We were totally cut off from our homeland. We've lost our core personal identities and have been forced to adapt to an alien culture in an alien land. Yet through it all, we have survived. We have survived the most vile racial slur with the N-word, which has meant death to many of us. Though we came through the horrors of slavery and gradually began to achieve new types of independence by forging a new culture for ourselves within the context of those things that we were indeed able to preserve from our homeland, habits, customs, and traditions, though in secrecy, we nevertheless achieved it. Even with achieving the establishment of our own institutions and organizations to serve and promote our own interests, there has always been members of white society seeking to regulate our movement. This has been a lifetime of psychological warfare rooted in our identity as people.
We're at 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. So, speaking again on behalf of the silent generation and the baby boomers who have a learning curve as it relates to our identity, I ask that you would preserve Black and African American, and because there are more than 10,000 of them still living. And for the younger ones of us, we can deal with the various acronyms being attributed to our community. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today and participate in the conversation.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Alphonia Adolph, your line is open, ma'am.
Thank you for the presentation and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am the daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter of sharecroppers. My father, LJ, was born into abject poverty in 1935 in the Jim Crow South. As his father, my grandfather, LC, was born in 1892. As his father, my great-grandfather, EC, was born in the 1870s. My great great grandfather, Aaron, was an enslaved person who was emancipated around 1863 and is the freedman of my patriarchal lineage. We were all born in America. Unfortunately, the statistical data collected by governmental surveys doesn't define who we are. My family and lineage are best described as the American descendants of slavery. I support this aggregation within the Black category. The designation of the American descendants of slavery, ADOS, best describes my lineal heritage. African American is an outdated, all-inclusive term that should be eliminated. Thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for being on the town hall today and sharing your family's experience.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Rashid Lujan, your line is open.
Hello, how you doing? Can you hear me well?
Loud and clear.
Okay, my name is Rashid Lujan. I'm the chairman of the New Negro Republic. We are a lineage society established to restore, preserve, and uplift the legacy, history, and also quality of life of Negro people. We represent more than 50,000 individuals who in 2000 specifically wrote Negro in on the U.S. Census, and more than 500,000 members who themselves prefer the term Negro over Black or African American. As it pertains to delineation and disaggregation of data, those of us whose lineage traces back to chattel slavery, we prefer the term Negro not be removed as it exists on our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents' birth and death certificates, as well as the UN Census Growth and Distribution Report from 1790 to 1910, counting the Negro population as a body of people, which also included Black, colored, and mulatto. In 1969, a Newsweek poll revealed that 38% of those who were polled at the time preferred the term Negro over all other terms, but due to the harms of the 1977 and 1997 OMB designating us to any racial group in Africa, specifically any Black racial group in Africa, this has not allowed us to have an identity here, which has led to a 46-year erasure where we didn't have anything specific to us, whether it was a race or an identity, and that is what has limited the federal policies that we would be able to have, and the historic disenfranchisement has continued to be unfulfilled along with the policies. I would like to say also that the psychiatrist Frantz Fanon has coined the term Negrophobia, and we see that this constant desire to remove Negro from the lexicon of history, whether it's in books, whether it's in government forms, whether it's in federal law, continues to prove this disdain, this hatred for the very people whose contributions have built this nation. And we do not know that this is not the time for us to choose to self-identify. We want to identify based on a time frame when our ancestors did not have that option to. So we argue that you guys continue to keep Negro on the federal record.
Sorry, Rashid, we're at 2 minutes.
And I would like to say that we've been able to sustain Negro throughout all colonization and all European powers. Negro is here to stay. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your perspective with us, Rashid.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Kia Jones with Elevated Development. Ma'am, your line is open.
Oh, can you hear me? Am I heard?
Yes, we can hear you, Kia.
Hello. Thank you so much for having this town hall today. I just want to start off with saying that I am in full support of American freedmen. I am a civics educator and also an activist. I would like to also add that is our lineage. It's on our historical documents per the Constitution, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. I want to stay within the legal context of our designation. Anything that refers to Black, Negro, colored, African American, anything that pigeonholes us into racial categories does not serve us well. We are a distinct lineage that built this country. We have ancestors and a heritage to uphold, and we want to remain that. You can say that we are Black Americans, but we are American freedmen as well. So because so many of us have paperwork that has some sort of designation, keep the racial designation, but give us our political designation, which is American freedmen. And I guess I will yield there, but I want to also say that specificity is necessary. All of the conversations today have been about specificity, and it is necessary, and we must be able to name ourselves, period. Also, Negro, if you travel the world, is used all over the world. So people who want to keep Negro and Black, it's used all over the world. What is going to determine your specificity here in this country and give honor to your ancestors? And I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and sharing your perspective.
Operator, we'll take our next caller now.
Sean Abutchin with AMC Task Force, your line is now open.
Hi, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. And I'm Sean Abajan, member of the ANCA Western Region Task Force. And I'm calling in support of the inclusion of the new Middle Eastern and North Africa MENA category as a checkbox on the United States Census questionnaire, and strongly request that it include a subcategory checkbox on Armenians. The Armenian American community in the United States currently lacks meaningful federal data as a group, while being one of the largest and most impacted groups of this classification of Americans in our country. The exclusion of an Armenian checkbox has significant ramifications on representation, rights, quality of life for Armenians in the United States. Armenian Americans are a sizable and important community that currently is not accounted for in the United States Census and should no longer be excluded. Armenian Americans are among the top 3 largest MENA communities in terms of population size, and that should be reflected with an Armenian checkbox in the upcoming census form. Thank you so much for your time.
We appreciate your comments, Sean. Thank you.
Operator, we'll take our next caller.
Antonio Thomas, your line is now open.
Yes, I'm a Black American from Louisiana. I'm a descendant of American slaves. One second. I'm a Black American. I have ancestors that were enslaved as well as free inhabitants who were classified as ethnically Black per the U.S. Census as early as 1790. My enslaved and emancipated ancestors were then railroaded and robbed by the Freedmen's Bureau and banks during the Reconstruction via fraudulent labor contracts, identity and land theft, and many predatory practices. That classification would be a spit in the face in 2023 and beyond to those of us aware of that history. That recommendation wasn't made by real Black Americans, but instead by special interest groups who seek to monopolize the identity of an entire ethnic group. That history belongs to Black Americans, and our ethnic classification should stay Black American. Immigrants from melanated countries should have to check an other box because they're not connected to the history of Black Americans in this country. And this is America. So making immigrants synonymous with being Black per the paperwork that we have is very disingenuous and disrespectful. And like I said, the freedmen classification it would be a spit in the face in 2023 to be calling us ex-slaves. And I'll stop right there. Thank you.
And thanks for being on the call today and sharing your perspective.
And operator, before we go to our next caller, just to remind everyone, we are getting close to 5 o'clock, which is when we're going to wrap up this town hall. I want to remind people that if they don't get a chance to actually make a comment today, we will have 2 additional town halls, one this coming Friday and Saturday, and they're both at 2 p.m. Operator, we'll take our next caller.
Dr. Vincenzo Vigliani, sir, your line is open.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, it's very interesting to go and hear this, but again, as you heard, many of the people's comments deals with identifying their ethnic ancestry, Again, the use of racial categories has only, if anything, over the years, especially after World War II, where it was used in the civil rights, has only made our society more divisive by the characterizing people in areas that are used against them. I also happen to have the experience of trying to implement affirmative action at the City University of New York, the only white population ever declared as an affirmative action group. And that experience has shown that categorizing only hurts in the legal environment. Again, that the best way, and again by the fact that I did have the data and showed that Italian Americans were disparagingly discriminated, gives more proof that we need to identify people by their experiences, their ethnic ancestry, which everybody knows one way or the other. So it's very simple. Use the same categories as in the census: self-identification of ethnicity, ancestry, and the rest let the computer do. Thank you, and I think we have to move in that direction and get away from the divisive categories. Thank you.
Well, we thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today.
And operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Mr. Shepard, an American descendant of slavery. Mr. Shepard, your line is open.
Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, hi, my name is Evan Shepard. I'm a licensed CPA with a master's in accounting from the University of Pittsburgh. Both sides of my family have deep ties to former plantations in North Carolina. In my profession, one of the first things I learned is that what gets counted gets fixed. As a descendant of slavery in the US, my group does not have our own designation by which we can be accounted for, and as such, the hundreds of years of government-sanctioned economic harm that we have endured cannot be tracked and can't be fixed. The term that we use should be descriptive, practical, and straightforward. American descendants of slavery is the term that best meets these requirements. Any member of our community will attest that while references to slavery are common in everyday conversation, the term freedman would be foreign to most of us. The term freedman hasn't been used in our community since 1872 when the Freedmen's Bureau was dismantled. This fact is made evident by Callie House and her ex-slave Mutual Relief Bounty and Pension Association, which was founded in 1898 in an attempt to secure pensions for the formerly enslaved Civil War soldiers. It can be further evidenced by Dr. King, who said in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Who are we? We are the descendants of slaves. Our people have rallied behind our shared connection to slavery consistently in the 158 years since slavery ended, while only using the term freedman for about 7 short years. Logically speaking, none of us that are alive today were freed from anything like our ancestors were. If we were to go with that term, it would require an additional step of reviving a long discontinued term that is not intuitive and really isn't acknowledged by our people currently. It's best to stick with tradition of our justice movements in the current vernacular, which honored our enslaved ancestors. The OMB should amend the census to include a checkbox for American descendants of slavery under the Black or African American minimum category, so that our unique lineage, contributions, and culture can be acknowledged in all of its glory. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us today.
Operator, we'll take our next caller now.
Laurel Moffitt with the Oregon Health Authority. Ma'am, your line is open.
Hello, my name is Laurel Moffitt. I work with the Oregon Health Authority team that developed disaggregated standards for Oregon's demographic reporting. We support the proposals to combine race and ethnicity, add MENA options, and disaggregate categories. We find that combining race and ethnicity works. Separating the two hinders data quality. And in addition, we support Proposal 5 to provide guidance for further disaggregation at state and local levels. This change would support growing initiatives like ours to develop flexible, culturally appropriate standards that go beyond the level of detail that may be feasible at a federal level. And there are 3 benefits for this additional guidance for states. One, it would streamline implementation because many reporting systems span multiple states, like large electronic medical record systems, and it would be efficient for federal standards to set up a large set of options for these systems to include that states could then choose from. We also recommend including a non-specific local code option that states can use for identities that are not listed. For example, the CDC has a list of 700 race ethnicity categories. That would make a great standard list. That list does not include Somali, so in that case, a state could use a local code. Number two, state guidance would address resistance to state initiatives. Current federal standards allow reporting entities to use any detailed categories that map back to the OMB minimum categories, but in practice, reporting entities hold the OMB standards as the gold standard and resist initiatives to implement disaggregated standards. We found this in Oregon. And so proposal 3 to hold the detailed data as standard addresses this misconception, and it would be helpful to support standards like ours. Finally, this additional guidance for states would standardize their processes to develop detailed standards. Since we launched our detailed standards a few years ago, more than 10 states have reached out to explore implementing their own disaggregated standards, and OMB can pull learnings from these projects, from community input and applicable research, provide guidance to improve the quality of each state's initiative. And finally, our Oregon standards have 39 categories based on community input. We expect these categories will change over time. So having support and flexibility from the federal standards will keep our detailed standards accurate and responsive to Oregonians' identities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your suggestions, Laurel. Thanks.
Operator, we'll take our next caller.
Jeffrey Hall.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, my name is Jeffrey Hall, and I am a Howard University alum. And I want to thank you for your time. And I suggest that the OMB delineate for descendants of U.S. chattel slavers and or Black Americans who can trace their lineage to the foundation of the United States. An example of delineation would be American Freedmen or Foundation of Black Americans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate your time too.
And operator, we'll take our next caller now.
Reggie Stewart, your line is now open. And he's out of queue. Kanji with Black American, your line is open.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kamji Ansley, and I'm a Californian. I've heard a lot of talk about changing my ethnic identity to freedman. Being a Californian, Field Order 15 had nothing to do with California. We entered the Union in 1850 as a free state. So designating freedmen actually erases a lot of us Black Americans who live on the west side of the Mississippi, number one. Black is my ethnic identity. It traces back to people of color and to chattel slavery before the U.S. was even formed. And it is lineage-based. And we've had many designations. We've had Indian, we've had colored, we've had mulatto, we've had Negro, we've had Black, we've had Afro-American, and the latest was African-American, which we have pushed back on for the last 40 years because that also erases a part of our ethnic identity. A lot of us who were here before colonization got reclassified under Pleckard, and we were classified as Negro. It took away all of our indigenous identities, and we have been classified along with everyone else under Negro, Black, and colored. Those are lineage-based identities. Those are lineage-based identities and only belong to us. Anyone else that migrates into the United States and is a melanated person needs to have an ethnic identity that does not include any of the ones that are lineage-based and belongs to Black Americans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for calling in and sharing your thoughts from California. We appreciate it.
Operator, we're ready to take our next caller.
Reggie Stewart, your line is now open.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me on. I don't envy the task that's before you. For transparency, while I am a supporter of the ADOS movement and the American Descendants of Slavery Foundation, I'm not representing them today. I am representing my ancestor, Hattie Stanley, my late mother's great-grandmother, who was born into slavery in what is now Louisiana. So my family history in this country kind of frames what I think that the OMB should do. First of all, maintaining the racial categories generally, that needs to still happen. Race still impacts the country today. Quality of life issues and outcomes are still very much tied to race. So we need to measure and address that with policy. In terms of the subcategory, as I mentioned before, I do have an affinity for the term American Descendant of Slavery. I don't have an issue with the fact that it's an acronym. You know, when folks use acronyms such as MENA to identify themselves, there's no issue. So what's good for the goose should be good for the gander, in my opinion. In terms of ADOS, I feel like American obviously speaks to who I am. I am an American. Our people were made American by way of the 14th Amendment. Descendant speaks to the fact that I have a multi-generational journey in this country, and slavery speaks to the institution that has directly impacted that multi-generational journey. And I feel that the people that were directly impacted by that institution and are impacted by those vestiges today should be measured, counted, and that our needs should be addressed with targeted policies and investments. And further, which I'm sure you're aware, the term ADOS speaks to the unique contribution that we've had in politics, music, culture, art.
Sorry, Reggie, we're at 2 minutes.
So I would say add that because America recognizes that ADOS is a term, the dictionary does. So I say the OMB should just go along. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Reggie, for sharing your views with us.
And operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Pamela, your line is now open.
Hi, I'm Pamela of Maryland. I'm a private citizen. Hope you can hear me.
We can, loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you are doing. It is very important. We need to have a better understanding of how different groups are doing. So I support option 3 for social as well as environmental justice purposes. For example, many Blacks that have immigrated from Africa have a different financial status. If Black groups are aggregated and combined, we don't get a true sense of how Black descendants of slaves are doing. Including other groups gives a false sense of progress. Many Black Americans have a triple heritage, African, Native American, and European. I personally prefer the term American Negro or Afro-American, or like Afro-Brazilian. It connects us to Africa, but distinguishes us from people who have immigrated here. This same situation applies to Hispanics. A white Cuban will have a very different experience than an Hispanic with a high percentage of indigenous blood. Also, Asians have a different experience depending on where they are from. Lastly, there should be recognition of those with a long lineage in this country. A Chinese American whose ancestors helped build the railroad should have a different recognition than a Chinese American who immigrated recently. As well, the same is true for Mexican Americans who've been here before the founding of the country. So I support option 3. It allows for greater detail, gives more options to include multiracial individuals as well as those not wanting to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your perspective on option 3, and we'll share that back with the working group.
Operator, we'll take our next caller.
Melissa Williams, your line is open.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. Just want to start off by saying that I am a master historian. I am a graduate of VCU and Norfolk State University. I have a master's degree in history, and specific my specific qualifications, it's on genealogy and going over slave records, specifically in the Virginia area. I believe that race needs to be removed from the lexicon, and we should definitely ethnically identify. Our ethnic identifiers should definitely be Black Americans because we have documents that designated us as Black Americans. We also had a free Black society. In addition to Black Americans who were enslaved. And I do not think that freedmen would be a good term to use for them because the free Black society were never enslaved, so how could they ever be freedmen? I personally do not want to be referred to as a freed slave. I think that is very offensive and it invokes trauma. Not every Black American is a freedman, but every freedman is definitely a Black American. The freedman term is a failure just like the Bureau and the bank. We also do not want to identify as an online acronym that was recently created a couple of years ago. Please prevent the ethnocide of our lineage by doing the following. Deeming a Black American as a person that reflects a person having origins to North America who is a descendant of chattel slavery in North America, or who descends from a free person of color who are reclassified to Indian Negro, Negro, mulatto, colored, or African American. We would like the continental African designation to reflect a person who has origins to the African continent and migrated to America from an African country. And we would like for the Caribbean American designation to reflect the person who has origins to a Caribbean country and migrated to America from a Caribbean country. Please stop the ethnocide of Black Americans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa, for your comments. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
And operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Lowell Logan, your line is open. Mr. Logan, check your mute button, please.
Thank you. You said Mr. Logan. Yeah, how are you? Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to give my 2 cents on it. I am a concerned citizen, a Black American. I think the designation should be foundational Black American, and it encompasses the freedmen. The only issue with having something like freedmen, you may have a descendant 2 or 3 generations down the lineage that lightened up or almost became white and now classifies as white, but then finds out that freedmen people are getting benefits and then, switches back and forth. I think making sure that the word Black is always in there alleviates that. And then also, too, it also takes care of the 2nd and 3rd generation of Africans or Caribbeans that come over that try to basically use the classification of Black Americans because they won't be able to use it with foundational at the front of it. And also, it does slow down the tethering of a culture. For instance, there was a time in history that certain Europeans weren't even classified as white until later on. They were later on allowed to be classified as white. So to wrap that up and to keep it simple, I think we should use foundational Black American, and that describes a specific group of people whose family came from the American slaves and built it. And that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today and giving your preference and explanation for it. We appreciate it. Thank you.
And operator, we'll take our next caller.
Davey Jessa, your line is open now.
Hello, greetings. Can I be heard?
Yes, you can. Loud and clear.
All right, greetings. I appreciate being able to speak during this meeting. Essentially, I'm born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, the birthplace of Special Field Order 15, which a lot of people try to reference. Ooh, boy, this is extremely interesting. I truly believe that there have been some speakers that spoke up extremely objectively and what's best for us as Black Americans. But prior to me getting to that, I would like to show support for the MENA, because I definitely see how they would want to be classified as their own special ethnicity. And also for the speaker that spoke about Asian being too broad of a term. When it comes down to being too broad of a term, they should be able to state their nationality or origin, and then be able to delineate from there, saying exactly what region that they're from. Also, for the continental Africans, or what would be, yeah, I think continental Africans, or something of the nature of Black Africans or something, they should be able to go under what the lawyer stated, who was from Florida, by being able to designate either their region as either East, West, South, or even to the particular country. That is the same thing for Caribbean Americans. But when it comes to Black Americans, foundational Black American and FBA, that already has a copyright and a trademark. I do not want my ethnicity to be anything that's copywritten and trademarked. When it comes down to ADOS, a descendant of slaves, I'm a descendant of multiple things. I have turpentine farmers in my family. I have construction workers in my family, electronics workers in my family, engineers in my family, lawyers in my family, federal court judges in my family. I do not want my ethnicity to be relegated to only being a descendant of a slave. And that is also the same thing when it comes down to freedmen, because I do, and I have in my lineage, free people of color. By us changing our names, it's just doing the same thing that has been done historically by misclassifications and reclassification of the people. That is why we're talking today about not being able to have enough data. I do not want to change. I don't want no renaming, misnaming, none of that. It has to stop. Let's just redefine what it means to be a Black American. That is people who have lineage here in America prior to, we can even pick a census, prior to the Civil War. Put a date on it. That makes us Black Americans, not anything else. So for these, go ahead. Yeah, so for the FBA, the ADOS, and the freedmen, I choose not to be called any of those things. And I do not want to continue the erasure of my people. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback, and thanks for the comment on not reclassifying, but perhaps redefining. I appreciate that. We'll share that back with the working group.
Operator, do we have another caller?
Yes, Amir Alt, your line is now open.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for accepting this call. I would like to propose a change in the race category, first being the term Black or African American. So these could both have their own separate term, one being Black American and the other one being African American, because these are two distinct groups, and this will help people in those groups be able to actually properly identify themselves. And I also like to change Black American to add foundational in front of it, meaning or relating to the foreman or serving as a basis or the foundation. That's because foundational Black American is a term that is used to refer to the Black descendants of American slaves who are not immigrants, and it will actually provide a level of clarity. And overall, I believe the term foundational Black American or freeman should be used as one box, so a person who identifies foundational Black Americans can actually state their lineage versus just Black or African American. And overall, what we can use to identify whether someone's a foundational Black American or American freeman could be the 1870 census and also the 1900 census, which is like a good verification source. And there's many more censuses that we can use. And that's because the term Black American has been used on many government documents such as birth certificates, driver's license, marriage license, and death certificates, and other artifacts as well as art and music. Overall, what I'm saying is that Black American and African Americans should have their own distinct separate boxes. And I want one box to say foundational Black American or American freeman, and another box to say African American. Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Albert Needleman, sir, your line is now open.
Can you hear me?
We can. Loud and clear.
Very good. I'll keep this brief. Just to comment on you're in the Middle Eastern North African. I think the inclusion of that is great. One of the subcategories listed is Israeli. I think that category could use some clarification. There are at least two groups, Palestinians and the Jewish diaspora,
who don't really have any other place geographically to which they could trace ancestry, but who might not necessarily associate themselves with the contemporary government, which is the only one in recent memory to have used that name. So renaming or Israel/Palestine/Judea or whatever, or something along those lines may be helpful to fully capture those applicable. That's all.
Thank you, Albert. We'll definitely share that back with the working group. Thanks for being on the call today.
My pleasure.
And operator, we're ready for our next caller now.
Katie Parker, your line is open, ma'am.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can, loud and clear, Katie.
Okay, I identify as Native American. I am a member of the White Mountain Apache tribe. I am commenting on 1C about the combined race and ethnicity question, specifically for individuals from Native American, American Indian, Indigenous, and Hispanic backgrounds. Instead of reporting Native American population, the reports automatically change to Hispanic. The 2020 US Census reports Native American population is 1.1%. We continue to be the hidden population when we are the Native people of the United States. Quoting from the National Congress of American Indians, the Asterisk Nation, while American Indians and Alaska Natives are an integral and unique part of the U.S. society, we continue to be the invisible to most other Americans. I am advocating that OMB recognize the self-identification of individuals with mixed race to include the Native American population instead of continuing to increase and inflate the Hispanic population. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie, very much for sharing your views with us today. We appreciate it.
Operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Thomas Lopez, your line is open.
Hello, hi, my name is Thomas Lopez, and I am a representative of multiracial Americans of Southern California that helped drive the revisions to the standards back in 1997. I want to express my support for the combined question proposal and let you know that we will be providing more detailed written comments to the comment website that you have put online. However, I also want to mention that if the separate questions are maintained, I request that you enact multiple responses to the Latino identity question. Multiple studies have shown that the primary reason for someone that has Latino ancestry but not marking it on the census or other forms is because they have some sort of mixed ancestry of Latino and non-Latino identity. I believe that it is lack of the option to mark multiple boxes that is preventing people from fully expressing their Latino identity. I would also ask to a change or removal of the language of the yes or no terminology for Latino identity. The question says something to the effect of yes, Latino, or no, not Latino, which sounds like contradictory statements for people who identify with multiple categories. Preferred would just be simple labeling of categories, Latino and non-Latino, and remove the operative language of yes or no. Aside from that, all the other comments that we will be making as an organization, we will try to maybe make during these town halls, as well as sharing in writing on the allowed website. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas, for your robust engagement in this process. We really appreciate it.
And operator, we're now ready for our next caller.
I have lineage from the American slave trade. I haven't found it actually.
You have background noise, Mark.
During these town halls, as well as.
Okay, I'll have to close that line. Oh, Mark, can you present
Yeah,
your
I'm here.
comment?
Yes. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm a Black American. Thanks to OMB. I know this opportunity comes around every 27 years. I know I lost my mother, my father. I lost my grandmother, grandfather, everyone. So I'm definitely here for my ancestors to be able to hold them. I'm a Black American. I did my lineage back to the soil. I understand that I have indigenous mixed with Atlantic slave trade lineage. So I don't want to be referred to as a freeman. So we refer to as a Negro. Everything outdates that just to be a Black American, you know. So I'm holding them up on my shoulders of my ancestors. So I definitely want to be known as a Black American. No foundational Black American or anything of that nature. So just to give us the up, that's all I want to be known as, Black American. Please hold that up to my ancestors, and please take that in consideration that a lot of us and our ancestors are from foundational Black. For our lineage from Black American. Thank you.
Thank you. We very much appreciate your feedback today.
And operator, we're ready for our next caller.
David Smith, your line is now open.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, loud and clear.
Okay, hi. Yes, I'm a Black American. I'm also a descendant of those who were held in U.S. chattel slavery. I can personally trace my family's lineage back to the 1790s, and I'm advocating for the term Black American to be used exclusively in describing those of us who have been here since before the founding of this country, as there are centuries of historical precedents establishing this as the term that we have not only been classified as, but how we currently self-identify. I am also advocating for the term to be delineated from all other groups of people considered Black in this country, but do not descend from those who were held in U.S. chattel slavery, or who were here before the founding of this country, such as continental Africans, Caribbean, and Latino descendant people identified as Black. I am advocating for the term African American to be removed as a descriptor for Black Americans, as this is a misnomer for us because we are an amalgamation of African, Indigenous, as well as even European ancestry. Freedman is a term that has been forced into the lexicon in regards to the lineage of Black Americans by a small group of individuals affiliated with nonprofit and special interest political groups that do not represent the whole of Black America. The historical justification for the term is questionable, and at this very moment, it's being contested by Black Americans not only in California, but elsewhere in this country. It is not at all the preferred term for the vast majority of our population, and it will certainly confuse the people we want to represent, and it would defeat the purpose of delineation and the disaggregation of data regarding our ethnicity and lineage. And I will end with just saying that Black American is the term that we know. Black American is the term that we want to be identified as, and we don't want anyone else identifying as that term. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for your comment.
And operator, we're ready for our next caller, please.
Johnny Morant Jr., your line is open.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, loud and clear.
All right, my name is Johnny Morant Jr., and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I support the ethnic designation of American descendants of slavery under the racial category of Black. The Office of Management Budget must take steps to accurately distinguish those who are descendants of slavery in the United States from every other Black ethnic group that has entered into the United States and gained citizenship post-emancipation. Once that delineation is made, it will make it easier to define and highlight the economic disparities between the families who endured and survived chattel slavery, Jim Crow, those who were excluded from federal programs such as the New Deal and GI Bill that helped form the American middle class and endured mass incarceration in the United States, from those different ethnicities or nationalities that cloud the wealth, health, education, and criminal justice disparities when obtaining data inter-race. American descendants of slavery is the obvious and best full description of our population group. We are American by every standard that was created in the early years of this country, except for the Naturalization Act of 1790. Descendants is simply defined as a person that descends from a particular ancestor. And in our case, we descend from those that were formerly enslaved in the United States. Chattel slavery in the United States was a legal and economic institution that began in the early colonial period and continued until the Civil War. During this time, Black people were held as property and forced to work without pay in a brutal system of oppression that denied enslaved individuals their basic human rights and dignity. Our group Black American citizens that have at least one ancestor that was enslaved in the United States that identified as such between the founding of the United States and the ratification of the 13th Amendment should be defined as American descendants of slavery. Finally, Black Americans should be able to identify with our specific group. We should be able to identify as American descendants of slavery, and Black immigrants should be able to identify by their country of origin or ethnicity. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny, very much for that comment.
And operator, we're ready for our next caller.
Minister, a Black American, your line is open.
Greetings. I am a Black American. I'm a person having origin to North America who descends from a free person of color or descends of chattel slavery in North America. I'm classified to Indian Negro, mulatto, color, or African American. I am definitely not a freeman per paperwork. I don't have any freemen anywhere in my lineage, only Black Americans. Now, I am delineated from the diaspora, and diaspora, I mean continent of Africa and also the Caribbean. Now, the names and designations I would like to be retired is freedman for sure, and American freedman, either or. Those are to be retired. And African American also, right before I land. African American, I want that retired. I want that put in the rafters. I want the accolades. I want the inventions. I want the creations, because that belongs to us, Black Americans. Black Americans who built this corporation / country from the ground up. We put the pillars on the White House, and it belongs to us, our land.
Thank you for your comment. We appreciate it.
Operator, and we're ready for our next caller.
Dino, your line is now open.
Yeah, I am a Black American grassroots advocate and lobbyist. In 1967, Melvin Charles and Gleason Jackson created the Black American Heritage Flag when he realized that every ethnic group had a flag at parades except Black Americans. There was an understanding then that the descendants of chattel slavery, reclassified as Black, colored, Negro, and mulatto, today known as Black American, African American, are a unique ethnic group with 400 plus years of our own food, language, and culture. With that understanding comes the need for our own specific designation in this country. Black American culture has been synonymous with Black culture, which has become synonymous with American culture. Now, the term freedman has been in use for it was in use for 7 years and got retired. The Freedmen's Bank was rife with corruption on top of the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands serving whites and refugees. The White House released a statement in which they acknowledged Black Americans for all their contributions and fighting for other ethnic groups, which denotes that they know exactly who Black Americans are. The term freedman is non-specific and irregardless of race. Now, I'm a Black American that descends from chattel slavery. Ann Dunham, Barack Obama's white mother, can't call herself a freedman because she descends from John Punch, a formerly enslaved man. Now, Ann Dunham is not the same as me. We are not freedmen. We are Black Americans, and the White House knows that.
Thank you very much for sharing your comments with us today.
And operator, we have, unfortunately, we have time for one more caller. We'll take our last caller now.
Our last comment is from Derek Papamanen. Sir, your line is now open.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Derek.
Okay, yeah. So with one of the recommendations to remove the term majority and minority, I agree with removing the term minority, but I recommend maintaining the term majority, and I recommend removing minority because it's trying to make it seem like all these other groups that don't happen to be non-Hispanic white have something in common with each other on an equal playing field, which isn't true. Also, with the term, the suggestion for adding the term American freedmen to the disaggregation in the Black category, I specify the term foundational Black American is added instead because the term foundational Black American includes the term freedmen, it includes descendants of Black American child slavery, and is very specific. I also recommend dropping the term African American to the Black/African American racial term and just be left as Black, because African American is just a very vague term that does not help the Black community. Also, with the suggestion about adding a Middle Eastern North African category, I don't agree with that term. That term is people who have heritage from the Middle East and North Africa, for the most part, look Southern European. They can visibly blend in with most white people in America. I don't think that category is accurate. I think instead, the Middle East and North Africans who are racially white should continue to be classified as white. And then the non-white ones, such as like indigenous Black North Africans, can be classified as Black. And then a lot of the other ones can be classified as some other race or and maybe other races as well. And that's my feedback.
Thank you for your comment, Derek.
In closing, I'd like to note that the Federal Register notice is open through April 12th, 2023. We ask that you please submit your comments on updating the federal race and ethnicity standards on federalregister.gov, which is the best way to provide comments to these initial proposals. You can also reach the Federal Register notice from a link on the working group's website, spd15revision.gov. You can respond to any proposals or questions in the notice that you like, and you can send any thoughts about how to improve the standards, even if they aren't related to one of the working group's initial proposals. Additional information will be added to the spd15revision.gov website throughout the process, including an archive of today's town hall. Be sure to check back for updates. If you would like to participate in another public town hall, or unfortunately we weren't able to get to your call, we will host one on Friday, March 17th, and have another town hall on Saturday, March 18th, both at 2 p.m. All of these town halls will follow this same format, with an overview of the standards and the initial proposals, followed by public input. Thank you again for joining us and participating in this exciting opportunity to improve the way that we collect and measure race and ethnicity. We look forward to reading your comments on the Federal Register notice. Thanks, everybody.
As today's forum is concluded, again, thank you very much for your participation. You may please disconnect at this time.
All right, family. So just real quick, we just want to let you know that we will be probably taping the tribal consultation coming up, the second town hall, which is going to be on the 17th that they mentioned. And then the third town hall is going to be on the 18th. And we're also working on 2 other stories, reparations and race versus political status. So we just kind of want to unpack some of what's happening, especially with this Hayland versus Bracking. So check that out. We'll probably be posting that within the next couple days, maybe next week. And then also Justice for Ujima Village, the Magic Johnson Park has a bittersweet story. So be on the look out for that. Please like, share, and subscribe. And outside of that, family, thank you for joining. If you have any comments or you want to reach out to us, please hit us up at etnmediagroup@gmail.com. That's etnmediagroup@gmail.com. And before we go, if you haven't seen the interview that we did with Professor Thomas Kramer, check that out right here on our platform. That was a great and informative discussion. And also we posted some things when we went down to San Diego. I spoke with Bishop Williams, his son, as well as Dr. Truth Bay, and the brother Jay at 60s.net. Go ahead and support that brother at 60s.net. He's doing some good work for the community. And we actually had our screening up here in Northern California for the Reparations Now documentary, which went very well. So we will have more information and details as we go along. So once again, thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you next time. All right, y'all, peace and reparations.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but freed people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations.
I had no idea that that church I was running by every day was something my grandfather established.
This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of its time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Overnight, it's like, oh, it's no longer the quarters, now it's Lincoln Heights. Oh, so now we get to use Abraham Lincoln for our name. And you think about all the other people that they could have used, but they picked Lincoln. And I think that's sort of a stereotypical of what they do.
There wasn't any black restaurants. As far as black business and weed, it wasn't none.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Why has it been easier for other groups than us?
Because of anti-black hatred.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR room, don't tune in.